everybody. This is the Wednesday morning, October 11th, 2017 session of the Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Udaly, Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Saltzman. Wheeler.
Here. Lots of people are going to testify. When they testify, you may or may not agree with them. Give them respect. Let them speak. Thumbs up, thumbs down. If you're a lobbyist, let us know. First item, please.
Item 1105, request of Angie Even to address council regarding unreinforced masonry retrofit project.
Good morning. If you just state your name for the record, please.
Yeah. Good morning, Commissioners, Mayor Wheeler. My name is Angie Even, and I am a native Portland resident as well as been a community business leader in the Woodstock Business District for over 30 years. Today, I'm here to represent myself and other building owners, but also the Woodstock Business District. I'm here to report that the Woodstock Business Association voted last month to unanimously against a mandate for the buildings in our district. And the reason for that is because when we did the math on the full retrofits, we would be looking at over $10 million. We see that as a devastation to our business district as well as a displacement of our businesses and also jobs that would be lost. I believe that this represents most business districts because especially the small districts, it takes a lot of years to build the right mix of businesses and buildings, and any big disruption in that would disrupt the entire ecosystem. On a city level, there's over 1,400 of the 1,640 buildings are commercial. 93% of those are 1 to 3 story. Also, there's 270 residential buildings with 7,000 units, and 18,000 of those are low-income city-financed units. So most of the buildings that we're talking about are small buildings. They're family-owned buildings, and they're worth far less than what the retrofits would cost. I've been tracking this and attending meetings for over a year, and at every meeting I've been asking the same question: what happens if building owners can't afford this? And the answer has been consistent, and that has been you will either have to sell or demolish. That was alarming. So building owners started a grassroots movement, and what we did is we pulled our money and we sent out 2 postcards that cost us a little over $1,000. And the purpose for that was we wanted to inform other building owners that this was coming, that this was happening, and to give them the information of what might happen within their lives. The responses that I received, first of all, was that most building owners didn't know what a URM was. And the rest of them, they wanted to know how they got on the list. And I'm going to run out of time. Anyways, what I want you to know is that building owners are your neighbors, and we're also mostly retired or at a retirement age. No one knows where they're going to come up with the money for these retrofits. We believe in the 2485 of the code, and believe if you corrected that code, that would take care of most of these buildings over time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I neglected to mention, and I should have said this up front, we're actually not going to bring that code back until December, and it's my understanding there's still some conversations taking place, particularly with the small building owners. It seems like we've ironed out the Category 1 and Category 2 buildings.
Yes.
And the contention point now is really this push-pull between our desire to protect the public and people who are in unreinforced masonry buildings, and the reality that there is expense associated with the retrofits.
Yeah.
So we're still very much having those conversations.
And I believe we all agree that the schools and the critical buildings are a priority in this project.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't think, it seems like everybody's in agreement
Everybody
on that, which is
agrees,
good.
yeah.
So we're 2/3 of the way there.
We are.
Good, thank you for
so
coming in.
much for your
Yeah,
time.
thank you. Next item, please.
1106, request of Pippa Aaron to address council regarding unreinforced masonry mandate.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, friends. Hi. So thank you for your clarification, and I want to just speak to that point and keep going with this idea. There are real social implications to the passing of any mandate beyond parapets, cornices, and chimneys. As you may know, I am in a unique crossroads of this potential mandate. There's in a number of ways. For one, I run PAIR, nonprofit for homeless kids. We're in a masonry building, which may or may not be on the list. There's some conflicting reports. Our landlord has been very clear, however, and she wrote a letter to you, Mayor Wheeler, to this effect, that she rents to us cheaply on purpose because she believes in our mission. But if there's a mandate that passes that would require her to spend several hundreds of thousands of dollars, she simply would not do it. PAIR would lose its home. Also, my job is to place homeless young people in affordable homes. And as you may know, I have kids with vouchers, and we can't find affordable homes for them to go into. There's a state of housing emergency. If a mandate passes that would require anything beyond parapets, cornices, and chimneys, any invasive action, any invasive retrofit, there are 7,000 units at stake. That means 7,000 people could lose their homes in these retrofits. That means 7,000 more competitors with my kids for 7,000 fewer units. There's real social implications here. Also, I'm an owner. In the 1990s, after my father died, I took that money, invested in Northwest 23rd. I own a beautiful building up there. I live there. I have long-term tenants. They're my friends. They're my neighbors. This is my home that we're talking about as well. And lastly, I'm an artist, and in the 20s, I spent my entire 20s as an artist renting from Ken Unclis. As we know, he's an incredible person who owns a lot of our town's creative spaces. And I asked him a couple weeks ago how this mandate would affect him, and he said 3 of my buildings would be subject to this mandate. I would keep the North Seed building because that is my legacy. It doesn't make economic sense, but it's my gift to the city. But to do so, I would have to get rid of the other 2 buildings. So what we understand is once something's been erased, we can't get it back. And we have to think in terms of neighborhoods. Multnomah Village, Woodstock, Hawthorne, Northwest 23rd, Northwest 21st. I mean, these neighborhoods are at risk. They could be gone and demolished, turned into box stores. I don't want that. I don't want California developers swooping in. I know my building already has been people are circling and asking to buy it cheap because they know this mandate is looming. So what's important to understand, because the committee will tell you otherwise, is that any unfunded invasive mandate with timelines causes evictions and demolitions, period. Walter McMoney's, who's on this committee, has done some retrofitting, but he's been able to do it slowly over years during the individual vacancies of the units. He didn't need to evict everyone because he had the luxury to plan and do things in a logical, sequential fashion. So I'm out of time, but I have more thoughts, and I look forward to talking with you all further.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next individual, please.
1107, request of Michael Fives to address council regarding unreinforced masonry mandate.
Mayor Wheeler, members of the council, my name is Michael Fives, and you did a great job on my name. Thank you. I'm uniquely qualified to talk to you about seismic resilience. I have a PhD from MIT in geophysics, and I'm a third-generation housing provider in the city of Portland. We have buildings that have been in the family for over 50 years. We have tenants that have been with us for over 40 years. First, I'd like to describe to you a little bit about what really is the problem here, and then we'll talk a little bit about some solutions. The major cause of death and destruction in earthquakes are tsunamis and fires. Contrary to what you might see on the news with collapsing buildings, that's the major cause of death and destruction. Of the collapsing buildings, URMs do cause death and destruction. However, it's important to note that in the last 200 years, there have been fewer than 350 deaths associated with URM buildings. And of that, approximately 70% of those deaths are a result of falling bricks and other debris from chimneys and parapets. The city recognized this about 20 years ago when you passed Title 2485, which required bracing of these parapets and chimneys whenever you did a re-roof or a major renovation to a building. The problem with that is that the city has failed to implement it and enforce it. As a building owner, I've done many re-roofs in the last 10 or 20 years, and all under permit, all under inspection. Not once did the city mention, oh, by the way, you need to brace the parapet. They said, fine, go ahead, re-roof your building. That's the problem. The city has not enforced their own code. It's widely recognized that you get the biggest bang for the buck by reinforcing the chimneys and the parapets. Let's talk a little bit about the cost. The cost to reinforce a parapet is about $350 per lineal foot. Well, for a one-story building, it's going to be that same cost it is for a five-story building. So the one-story building can't afford as much as a five-story building. Any policy you pass must be flexible enough to allow for the different size of buildings, the kinds of uses, and so forth and so on. I propose that you make 2485 mandatory with a set date that it has to be completed by. That's the stick. The carrot is, if you provide financial incentives for people that do it before the mandate deadline, I think a lot of those people in those one- and two-story buildings that can't afford a full retrofit can go ahead and do the job, and will do the job with the proper carrot. Please provide a funding mechanism that provides carrots and sticks to people. The stick can be fines if they don't do it after a certain date, but it's important that there is significant funding. Senate Bill 311 will not provide that significant funding. It'll only provide partial property tax exemption. We need a program similar to what was done for the Energy Trust Program, where you get tax credits, where you maybe get rebates. In that case of energy tax credits, it was from the power companies. But I think we need to divide a sustainable, viable funding mechanism in order to encourage property owners and the ability to do the retrofits without demolishing or selling their buildings. Thank you very much.
Excellent testimony. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next individual, please.
1108, request of Mark Rogers to address council regarding unreinforced masonry mandate.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and the members of the council. My name is Mark Rogers, and my wife Kathy and I own a 34-unit apartment building called the Morley Court at 1831 Southeast Hawthorne. We engaged Mark Temple of Temple Engineering to do a seismic evaluation, or start that process, back in February of 2017. After spending $8,000, Mr. Temple came up with some recommendations. I'm going to break this down into 3 steps. Step 1 is the complete evaluation. Step 2 is bracing cornices, parapets, and chimneys. And step 3 is wall-to-floor diaphragm bracing at each level. Step 1 and 2 would cost approximately $190,000. Step 3, which is the wall-to-floor bracing at each level, is $660,000 for a total of $850,000. If I was able to get a 25-year loan, it would take 70% of my annual income to fund loan payments for that work. What are my options? I have 45 tenants in that building that would have to be displaced if I'm to do this work. Once that goes away, that affordability, these units are affordable, it's never going to come back. Those tenants won't come back. The URM Policy Committee has argued that I don't necessarily need to displace tenants to do this work. I believe, along with my engineer, that that's unrealistic with scaffolding, deconstructing walls, the potential for lead-based paint and asbestos mitigation that needs to go on in the building. I just don't see that happening. So what's this mean? It means to me that even though this is major construction to do parapets, cornices, and chimneys, that can be done without displacing tenants. You know, we've spent the time and the money to accurately come up with a picture of what it would cost for our individual building to do this work. There's approximately 7,000 similar units in the city of Portland, 1,800 of which are part of the city of Portland's publicly financed affordable housing. Javier Mena, the assistant director of the Portland Housing Bureau, stated in last week's October 4th policy meeting that that any mandate beyond parapets, cornices, and chimneys he could not support. He stated we are looking at 15 to 17 buildings and many millions needed to do the work. So what's this mean? We really can't do this without the city of Portland's, we can't make Portland more seismically resilient without your help for funding. In the spring of 2015, the city of Portland formed an incentive committee that was an advisory board for the policy committee. The incentive committee had private and public individuals with expertise in funding and financing to make recommendations to the policy committee. At this point, I don't know whatever came of that, but my recommendation would be that we reconstitute this particular policy committee with those experts. We've got we've got this part done, so what we really need to do is figure out how to make this funding available at either the state and the city level, and maybe the federal level with grants to support this. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Next individual, please.
Item 1108, request of John Hollister to address council regarding unreinforced masonry building mandatory seismic upgrade plan.
Good morning.
Morning. My name is John Hollister, and there seems to be a theme in the presentation so far, and I'm going to be right in that same theme. And I kind of, as I was sitting there, I kind of changed what I was going to say, because what I'm really feeling right now is just tremendous sadness. And everyone that you've heard, and they've been stoic in their presentations, but underneath every one of them, there's tremendous fear. And this is their livelihood. This is, they don't have 401ks. Their 401ks are their buildings. And what is being presented to them is things that are going to basically wipe them out. It's kind of like the catastrophic illness that comes that changes the whole ballgame on your life. So with that, the problem that I believe this committee was started with was that there was a code adopted in 1994, and in 2017, only 15 to 20% of the buildings had upgraded to the code. That's the problem. The solution that was voted on October 4th was, just to summarize it, it's let's make this more stringent with much higher levels of upgrades and create penalties for non-compliance. And it passed. Then it didn't pass because the committee members admitted they didn't understand what they were even voting for. And so the bigger problem is these people have been meeting on this for 2 years, and if they don't understand it, how will we understand it, and how will we be able to implement it? This is a complex problem, and we need innovative solutions. I didn't make that up, by the way. It's a successful solution cannot be more complex than the problem. My hypothesis is that maybe the 1994 code is just fine. Maybe the implementation was flawed. I'm in sales, and a lot of people in my office will come in and crack champagne when they sign a partnership agreement. Partnership agreements are not worth the paper that they're signed on, because 95% of partnerships don't work. And they don't work because there's two different bodies that are trying to combine their interests, and they don't trust each other, and it never goes off the ground. So once one is signed, that's when the work begins. So we've got a good code. Let's go with the code. Let's get it implemented. So I had some awareness questions I went out to the public with, and I asked hundreds of people, what is a URM building? Less than 2% knew what it was. Then I asked them just kind of like the control question is, who knows what a brick building is? 100% of people knew what that was. And then I asked them, what was the difference between a brick building and a URM building? Nobody knew. And so the solution can be, I have great hope. And, and we kid about this book, Mayor Wheeler, but this book is really, really good. And this can be done. I do have hope with innovative solutions, and it's a combination of awareness, adequate funding sources, carrots versus stick, and implementation. Thanks.
Great, thank you, and thanks to everybody who came in to testify today. And just a reminder for people who did not hear, this will be brought back in December, so there's still plenty of runway here, and we do appreciate your input today. That was very, very good information that was provided. Carla, could you tell me which items, if any, have been withdrawn from the consent agenda?
Yes, 113, 114, and 117.
Please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda.
Fritz,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the consent agenda is adopted. Please call 113. I'm sorry, 1113.
Reappoint Claire Carter and appoint Alexander Botzel, Sarah Radley, and Martha Williamson as members to the Development Review Advisory Committee for 3-year terms.
And I understand Mark Fetters is here, is that correct? Could we see Mark? There he is, hiding behind the column. Come on up, sir, and if you could just give us 1 minute. Good morning.
My name is Mark Fetters. I'm a senior management analyst with the Bureau of Development Services, and I provide staff support to the Development Review Advisory Committee. The 17 member positions on the DRAC are laid out in city code. They represent different stakeholders to the development review process. And so this motion before you today is to reappoint one of the members, Claire Carter, to a second 3-year term, and then to appoint 3 new members representing land use planning professionals, environmental conservation and green building, and public works permit customers. These are currently vacant positions, and so these 3 individuals that have been mentioned have been nominated for those positions.
Very good. And I don't know who pulled this item.
Joe Walsh.
Joe Walsh. Mr. Walsh, if you want to come on up. And just a reminder to everybody, let people testify, be respectful of their testimony. Please don't interrupt. Interruptions are not allowed of either people testifying or council deliberations. If you do interrupt, you'll be asked to leave. And if you don't leave when asked to do so, you're subject to arrest for trespassing. We don't want that to happen, so let's all just be respectful. Good morning, Mr. Walsh.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. As a general rule, we do object to consent agenda appointees. We don't like them. We think that the public has a right to know who's going on their committees because this council takes their committees very serious. You do. You take them seriously. When they do a recommendation, you guys normally do the pirate. Aye. So we object. We want it out front. We want it under regular business. We want them here. We want to hear from them. We want to see them. We want to ask them some questions. We'll take 2 out of 3 because we're not going to get the 3rd one. But we should get the first 2. So that's our objections. We're going on the record. We know you're going to vote on these people going through, and that's part of your problem, Mayor. That's why your approval rating is at 15%. It was 18. It's down to 15. So you're going in the wrong direction. Bring your appointees to the council. Let us see them, ask them some questions. Let's find out who these people are. It is not up to a citizen to do the research on your candidates. It's up to you to tell us how good they are and how wonderful they are. And it's also up to the advocates and the activists to tell you maybe not so much. And then you decide. But under consent agenda, you do it under the table there, Mayor. You slip it through. You know, it's like Tammany Hall. That's what it reminds me of. And I'm really not that old. However, I'm aware of Tammany Hall in New York. And that's what you're running. You're running Tammany Hall. So stop it. Bring them in here. Let's hear them. Where are they? They're not here. You like them. Who cares what you like? We, the citizens, should like or dislike them. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for a clarification, these are not my appointees. My bureau appointees do go on the regular agenda. And they are, I just want to be very clear. We have a commission form of government. These are not my appointees, and it's not my decision. Please call the roll.
I need a motion to accept the report.
So moved. Second.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The appointments are approved. Call 1114, please.
accept and appropriate a grant in the amount of $22,000 from Bullitt Foundation for the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, Cascadia Regional Network, to support information sharing and spur innovation in city sustainability work.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Amanda Romero from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
A little louder if we could.
I'm Amanda Romero from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
Thank you.
And I'm here to ask you to accept and appropriate a grant from the Bullitt Foundation. This grant would support work of the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, Cascadia Regional Network. The network is a group of sustainability leaders that foster sustainability-focused technical exchange between cities in the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. The funding will be used to support the following 3 activities.
Could you speak up? I'm very sorry.
Oh, yes. The funding will be used to support the following 3 activities. Number 1, regional information sharing among Cascadia sustainability staff. Number 2, an annual Cascadia Network meeting. And 3, regular coordination and quarterly calls between the network members.
Very good. And what sort of benefits do you anticipate could come out of this?
Working together with Cascadia Network cities, we're able to further the goals that are established and we're under direction to achieve under our climate action plan.
Very good. Thank you. And I'm not sure who pulled this.
Lightning pulled this.
Very good. Come on up, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks, Amanda. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. One of the reasons why I pulled this item is that the Bullitt Foundation, I really find them to be a very impressive foundation. And what I like about what they do, well, one of their top leaders there is Dennis Hayes. He was the founder of Earth Day. And they have a lot of people on the board that I'm very impressed with. In fact, one of the local developers, Mark Edlund, is on the board. We have various high-level people, environmental attorneys, people working at PGE. It's a very impressive group that they are looking at sustainable ways of building buildings. And what they actually do is that they are almost off the grid on a lot of their projects. And what I mean is that when they do solar energy, there's no other forms of electricity. When they do water, they're using the rainwater itself. And everything that when they put into these buildings, they have a test that they look at any type of chemicals used, anything in these type of products. They even look at the type of furniture, the type of folders you have. They analyze it and they decide if it's going to go into this property, which is their headquarters. They're a very impressive group that I think does deserve the recognition. Now, one of the things that I was doing at the beginning here is that on their grant application, they're very clear on where they want their funding to go. And when I was reviewing this, it's my understanding the city is receiving this grant and then also giving money back to these various groups. That's my understanding. And they'll be participating in this funding process, which I think is good. That's my understanding on what the city of Portland will be doing. And again, like I've stated, from my position is that it's my belief and their belief also is to really preserve and protect nature around them on how they build their buildings, how they look at how they want to place certain structures outside. And it's a very important concept in the direction they're going is to balance your buildings with nature. And they're very well thought out. And it's a very impressive group. And I hope everybody takes the time to pull up the Bullitt Foundation, understand the direction they're going, and understand that they're doing some really good things. Thank you.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Please call 1117.
Ratify a letter of agreement between the city and AFSCME Local 189 regarding work schedules for certain employees of the Water Bureau.
I understand Patrick Ward is here, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Right in front of me. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Patrick Ward, Bureau of Human Resources. The ordinance was pulled from the agenda in order to correct the purpose of the proposed legislation section of the impact statement. And it's just to better reflect the legislation, this letter of agreement.
You want me to move this amendment?
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Any further discussion on the amendment? Please call the roll on the amendment.
Fritz.
So this just corrects the name of the union. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment's adopted. Any further discussion on the main motion? Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted as amended. Thank you for coming in. And I believe that is the end of the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Correct.
All righty. First time certain item, please, 1110.
Proclaim October 2017 Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you. Are we going to read the second item with it?
I'm sorry, yeah, thank you, in 1111.
Increase a grant agreement with the YWCA of Greater Portland in the amount of $30,000 to allow the YWCA to become a host agency for an Encore Fellow position at Gateway Center for Domestic Violence Services.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This is a time for us to bring awareness to the countless people, victims and survivors, children and families, friends and communities that are impacted by domestic violence. Domestic violence is the ongoing pattern of abusive, manipulative, or controlling behavior where one partner maintains power and control over another partner. This typically happens in the form of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. In the city of Portland, domestic violence accounts for a significant portion of all assaults. It is estimated that nearly 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will be affected by domestic or sexual violence in their life. Nearly 3 women are killed every day by their intimate partners. Just in the past 4 weeks alone, we have lost 2 young women due to domestic violence. Shay Martinez, age 29, and Lila Streeter, age 26. Shay was assaulted by her boyfriend and died 2 days later from traumatic injuries. Lila was assaulted by her husband and later died from blunt force trauma to her head and abdomen. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of these 2 young women. The City of Portland and Multnomah County have a long-standing commitment to prevent and address and help to prevent domestic violence and help families heal from it and its impacts on our communities. We have invested in specialized police units, provided funding for community-based advocates, and we've partnered together to bring a variety of services and resources for families experiencing domestic violence under one roof at the Gateway Center. Through our joint support of the Gateway Center, we strive to prevent and reduce the impact of violence and its subsequent trauma by providing comprehensive advocacy and services in a welcoming and culturally sensitive environment. The Gateway Center was also the first place, other than the downtown courthouse, where people could go to obtain a temporary restraining order. Today, our satellite courtroom at the Gateway Center files over 50% of all restraining orders in Multnomah County. And we will soon expand to offer elders and people with disabilities protection orders against their abusers. The Gateway Center prioritizes survivors' safety, promotes survivors' rights, and supports survivors' desire to be free from violence and abuse. I am immensely proud of the work that is done every day at the Gateway Center. It is not easy work, and it takes dedicated individuals to make a difference in our community. And we have some of those dedicated individuals with us today to talk more about the work going on in our community to prevent, address, and help families heal from domestic violence. We will start off with the Gateway Center Director, Martha Strawn Morris. Then we have Abby Gassama. Naya? Okay, got that right. Tiffany Eggleton, a survivor and dedicated advocate. And I think we also have Chuck Sparks of the District Attorney's Office.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, he had to leave to
Oh, he had to
chair a
leave.
committee. Yes, I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay. I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Martha.
Thank you so much. I'm Martha Strawn Morris, the Director of the Gateway Center for Domestic Violence Services, and Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners, I really appreciate you taking the time to make this proclamation and acknowledge this month. I was desperately trying to get a web-based version of my presentation up so that you could see a video. I'm not sure if I did or not, and my charts might be a little bit funny, but you'll forgive me. The video, I feel like, is more important. In the 8 years that I've been working exclusively in the domestic violence field, I've come to really appreciate the nuances and the complexities that define the work. The Gateway Center is a powerful collective of providers working together, and we've become a hub for some important collaborations that reach beyond the center's walls, two of which I'm looking forward to having highlighted here today. But all of our best efforts will not solve domestic violence, and while I'm deeply proud of the work that I will share about today, I humbly say we cannot fix this alone. For this presentation, I'm going to spend a few minutes highlighting the work of the Gateway Center because it's important in terms of the investment the city makes in this area. But I'm going to turn to my partners to share about two community-wide collaborations that are reaching survivors across agencies and entities and are both important examples of the power we have when we work together. You'll hear from hopefully two survivors today, one in person, and I hope that their words will inspire your ongoing commitment to survivors of domestic and sexual violence and their children. And finally, I'm going to give you a peek into a new project that I hope will be the beginning of our next community-wide success. I should also say that Sergeant Martin Padilla is scheduled to join us today. He's caught on it. 84. He's in touch with me on my phone, which is why this is sitting near me. I'm very hopeful that he will make it. I can change the order a little bit to give him a little bit more time. If not, I'm going to pitch hit for him in his absence. So excuse me if I seem slightly distracted while I look around for him. Okay, let's talk about the Gateway Center. I know that you're aware of the variety of services that we provide at the center, but I'd like to take a minute to highlight them and thank my partners. Most people come to the Gateway Center for what we think of as safety services. So they come for restraining orders, they come for safety planning and advocacy services. Those services are done by an amazing team of advocates that come from Naya Family Center, Bradley Engels Healing Roots Center, the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, Self-Enhancement, Inc., El Programa Hispano, and the YWCA of Greater Portland, and I thank them for helping ensure that some of the best advocates in the city come to work at the Gateway Center. We're also proud to house a variety of stability services, including therapeutic services for children and adults, 3 different types of legal services, access to criminal justice services, housing, placement, and subsidies, economic empowerment, access to OHP and food assistance. And the Gateway Center would not be the Gateway Center without Impact Northwest, LifeWorks Northwest, the Oregon Department of Human Services, Legal Aid Services of Oregon, the Oregon Crime Victims Law Center, Catholic Charities Immigration Legal Services, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, the Disability Awareness Resource Team, Portland Police, Volunteers of America Home Free. It's a village. We really are a village, and it takes that. I thank all those partners for the energy and spirit they bring to the work. To make the services easy to access, we're conveniently located on public transportation. We also have a drop-in childcare. So I want to say some final thanks, VOA Home Free's and VOA's Relief Nursery for the childcare we rely on, as well as Ride Connection and Lyft for transportation support, and the Food Bank and Starbucks for helping keep our participant kitchen full. People learn about the Gateway Center in a variety of ways. The biggest is a kind of broad category called service provider. I think what this indicates is that there's a fairly high level of consciousness of domestic violence in our community, but people lack the time or the expertise to know how to help, so they send them to the Gateway Center, and we're really happy to get their referrals. The second biggest category comes from community members, so family and friends trust the Gateway Center to help their loved ones when they're dealing with domestic violence. Since we've opened, between 20 and 25% of our referrals come from a law enforcement interaction. So we are able to enhance the public safety intervention. The Oregonian reported earlier this month that between January 1st and August 30th, they received 3,000 domestic violence calls. And in that same period of time, 494 individuals came into the Gateway Center saying they learned about our services from police. So it's a good partnership and it's working. Boom, boom, boom. Just a few moments on demographics. I'm not going to read all of these numbers. About 17% of the folks who came last year were African American, 13% were Latina, and another 11% identified as multiracial. Oh, I should say here though too that about 10% of our visits to the center require services in a language other than English. And in this 12-month period, we provided services in more than 30 languages. So the age of our participants, the big bulk of folks we see are between 20 and 50 years old. But last year we saw 452 individuals who are over 50. We serve way more women-identified folks than male-identified folks, but we do help men when they seek our services if they are experiencing domestic violence. In terms of how busy we are very busy. We count both visits to the center as well as unique visitors to the center. So the visits you see there on the left and the unique visitors are on the right. How this breaks down into our day-to-day work, we average 36 adult survivors seeking services each day. That's an average. If you add the average number of children coming into the center and the people that come for support groups, it goes up to about 45. We don't count the support people that come in the doors with those folks, which we certainly let in, sisters, friends, other people, but we're very, very busy. These are the services that our first-time visitors indicate that they want in their check-in. These percentages won't add up to 100 because people can check that they want multiple things. So you can see that more than half of the people coming in the doors are interested in getting a restraining order. But a similar number, and some of the same people, say, I don't know what I want to do. I want to explore my options while I'm here. That's why we have that talented expert advocacy staff as our frontline staff, is to really help people think about what's available. A really important learning that's happened for us over the years at the Gateway Center is that the folks coming in don't always know about the services that are available in the community and don't have words to say them. And so it's really important that we have this space to talk about what the options are, what the criteria are, and how to access the services.
Can I ask, and you may have
Sure.
this in a future slide, but
Sure.
what percentage of your visitors need some kind of emergency housing as a that you learn about through the first contact?
I know about people's housing situations for the folks that sit down with the navigators. Our best number on that is about 17% of folks are looking for a housing change. Only a portion of those would say that they were I know that's not exactly your question. I'm getting
Right.
there.
No, it's helpful.
A portion of those identify as homeless. Others are in a version of a shelter or with a family or friend, but it's not a stable situation. when you're talking about emergency and sort of for a safety reason, it's difficult, and I don't have a good number for you. Abby is going to be able to share how many times our community-wide across our domestic violence continuum we use, how many shelter beds we've used in our continuum, as well as how many motel vouchers we've used to get somebody safe. We do frequently put somebody in a motel that day, that night, from the Gateway Center, because that's the only safe option that we have. I'd be happy to get more specific and follow up with you after today.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the question. Two more pieces of information before I turn it over to my partners. I thought it would be good to show the kind of broad investments that are made by the two arms of local government. For the city's part, it's me and my team of three that are amazing, by the way. Amanda, Scott, Karina, if you're listening, I think you're the best. And the frontline advocacy staff comes out of the city investment, as well as immigration legal services and operating expenses. But Multnomah County makes very significant investments to the Gateway Center too, including the use of an 11,000 square foot building, our security officer, an adult therapist, and the victim advocate from the district attorney's office. Now, these investments are supported by other contributions from partners who maybe have staff in the building, but we don't pay to be there. So it's a great community-wide collaborative project. And this may be a video that will play, and it might not be a video. This is a video I had that was produced by Domestic Violence Safe Dialogues of a survivor named Audra Reed, who gave us permission to use it. She basically is talking about, in a context away from the Gateway Center, something not about the Gateway Center at all, that the Gateway Center made it possible for her to change her life, and that if she'd had access to such resources, she would have left 15 years earlier. But we have Tiffany here as a real person who will share her story shortly. I'm sorry that didn't work. These are the advisory council members, and the last specific slide to the Gateway Center before I turn it over. This is a group that only comes together quarterly now, but they are willing to wrestle with important struggles that we face in the domestic violence world, including one that Officer Padilla was going to talk about, and if he arrives, he will. If not, I will. That where for many, many years, restraining order respondents, the people that are restrained under a restraining order, were ordered not to possess guns. So there was a court order in place that said you may not possess guns, but there were no protocols or procedures to enforce that order. And this advisory council took that on, and we are now one of only 5 counties in Oregon that has protocols in place to help to ensure that restraining order respondents either surrender their guns or are held accountable for surrendering their guns. And I'm not going to have the exact numbers, but it's very exciting when you hear how many guns we got. I am going to then turn it over to Abby Gassama from NEA Family Center. Abby has been part of a collaborative effort to improve our access to coordinated shelter and housing services across the DV continuum, and she's going to tell you more about that. Take it away, Abby.
Good morning.
Morning.
As Martha said, I'm Abby Gassama, and I work at the Native American Youth and Family Center. I've been there for about 7.5 years, and I've been working in the domestic and sexual violence field for 13. Thanks again, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, for your proclamation and recognition, both of domestic and sexual violence as a social ill, but also of our continuum's connectedness and expertise in this area. So in 2014, we embarked on a system-wide process to coordinate access to both our shelter and our housing interventions. And the Gateway Center provided both the space to do this and the leadership in this effort. Martha was a very fearless leader for us for this long and difficult process. Fortunately, We already had housing-specific resources that were within the domestic violence continuum, which was amazing because that made it possible for us to have the power to make these decisions internally about how we were going to coordinate access. I mention this because in many jurisdictions, there aren't housing resources set aside specifically for domestic violence services, and in those places, they're having difficulties even getting to the table to talk about housing resources for domestic violence specific set-asides. So I'm really grateful for our leaders that came before us and resourced our system in this way. And I don't know, Mayor Wheeler, if you were a part of that previously, but if you were, thank you, because it really set us up to succeed. So the key question that we had to talk about when we were making this new coordinated access system was really what makes one survivor more vulnerable than another. And really, all the existing vulnerability indexes and assessments that we had available to us either didn't take domestic violence into account at all, or it was just one question on an assessment that really didn't dig into what an advocate would ask when we're talking about vulnerability for survivors. What makes a single adult vulnerable in the homeless system or a family vulnerable in the homeless family system is a really different kind of vulnerability than what we're talking about when we're talking about domestic violence survivors. It looks really different. So what we landed on was that none of these assessments worked and that we had to create our own. So prior to doing this work, we all really competed for scarce resources. So there's 14 agencies, and we were all kind of battling amongst ourselves to get these really small resources. And oftentimes what was happening was advocates that had been around the longest and had the best resources or the best connections with folks at other agencies were getting the best resources for their participants because they had those connections with other folks at other agencies that held those housing resources, which really played out in a difficult way, I think, especially for culturally specific organizations because we don't have shelters and we had fewer housing interventions at that time internally. And so I remember when I came on board in 2010, and I was working with participants, I really only had success getting my participants into one of our shelters. And the reason being, I had a connection with the folks at that shelter because we ran a support group in that shelter. And prior to coordinated access, I never had success getting any of my participants into either one of the other shelters because I didn't have a relationship with the folks that worked at those shelters. So this was really unfair to our participants and to our staff who were burning out quickly because they didn't feel like they could help people that they were working with. And so I'm really proud that we got to this point where we were able to create what we now call the Safety and Stabilization Assessment. This allows us to cooperate across agencies to serve our most vulnerable survivors with some of our most precious resources. The most precious of those, I would say, are our long-term housing resources, which are six-month and longer housing interventions that we provide. And for those subsidies, we all come together as a continuum. So we're no longer 14 agencies competing, but we are a team together that meets bi-monthly at what we call a resource coordination team meeting to bring folks that we're working with at all of our agencies and discuss who best fits this resource that we have available, and we can make a collaborative decision together about that. Yeah. So, as Martha talked about earlier, and as you can see on this slide, we help a lot of people within our system. And the people who we help truly benefit from our expertise. They benefit from our expertise in being able to contextualize rental and employment histories to landlords based on domestic violence, our expertise in the impact of trauma on the brain, our expertise in the prevalence of victim blaming and how we can interrupt that even when the survivors that we're working with often blame themselves for what's happened. And having these resources allows survivors to benefit from our expertise and our specialty over time. So I don't know if I really need to read the numbers, they're up there, but you can see that we We sheltered 392 individuals in this last fiscal year, and that is in our domestic violence shelters specifically. On top of that, we motel vouchered 931 individuals. And those are folks that may have eventually been able to find safety in another way outside of seeking shelter. We often call those diversion resources, so making a plan to live with friends and family. These are folks that we may have eventually been able to help with a rental resource and get them into a new place. These are also folks that sometimes we relocate to different communities for safety reasons. And then we provided 692 individuals with what we call agency-based decisions, which are rent assistance, moving assistance, 6 months or less. And then 288 individuals received 6 months or longer housing subsidies through our new continuum. So it's an honor to be a part of Portland's domestic violence continuum. I'm proud to tell you that we are leading the nation when it comes to coordinated access to shelter and housing for domestic violence survivors. And your investments in our services helped us to get there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question,
Yeah.
actually several. On the grant agreement to the YWCA, as you pointed out, Mr. Morris, you have a lot of partners.
Yes.
So how was the YWCA selected as the one to do this particular project?
They were, and I'm going to circle back to this also at the end.
Okay.
But I can tell you, to tell you just a lot about this little elder abuse expansion. They were, they're already a host to an Encore Fellow. So they know what administratively it takes, and we're willing to take the money and then have that person as an employee in their agency.
Okay, I thought you were done with your presentation, so I'll
I'm
wait
sorry.
until the end, that's
Thank
fine.
you, yeah, and
thank
I
you.
will welcome you, thank you. So I am pleased that Sergeant Martin Padilla of the Portland Police Bureau's Family Services Division is here to join us with more details about our gun dispossession program. I consider Sergeant Padilla a real ally in this work, and I'm grateful that he could be with us today.
I'd like to thank Martha and the efforts of...
Move the microphone over, please.
Martha and the efforts of the Gateway Center, who we've, at the Police Bureau, found to be an invaluable resource with our domestic violence survivors that come to us, to include their services for helping with obtaining restraining orders and just providing a safe place for them to report their DV-related crimes, as their office is right across the parking lot from ours. And just to give you a little context, the Police Bureau responds to about 11,000 domestic disturbances a year. My unit, the Family Services Division, or Domestic Violence Reduction Unit, is only able to assign about 8 to 10% of those cases for follow-up. And our criteria for those assignments weigh lethality, the severity of the offense, presence of children, the history of the offender, and the likelihood of recidivism. For many years, however, we've had an absence in one type of domestic violence prevention that was not actively pursued, and that type was the dispossession of firearms from individuals prohibited from possessing them due to court order as mandated by the Family Abuse Prevention Act, or FAPA, which was passed in the 80s, specifically as what we know to be restraining orders. In 2014, the violation of restraining order gun dispossession program was developed in collaboration with the Police Bureau, Multnomah County DA's office, the Multnomah County Department of Community Justice, and the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. And this program was conceived out of recognition of the alarming data that showed that 1/3 of all women in the U.S. were murdered by current or former intimate partners. Domestic violence assaults involving a firearm were 12 times more likely to result in death, and 52% of female homicides were committed with firearms. That's as of data that was published in 2014. So the program's purpose was to establish a procedure for enforcement action against those respondents who did not comply with the FAPA order or restraining order, with an emphasis on those who do not comply with the firearms prohibition. Simply put, the program's intent is domestic violence homicide prevention. So we accomplish this by a review and triage of all FAPA order violations, or all FAPA orders served in Multnomah County in which the respondent failed to notify the court of a firearm surrender, Additionally, all other domestic violence incidents involving reported FAPA violations in the city of Portland as well as Multnomah County are reviewed along with those referrals from some of our community partners like Gateway Center. Upon assignment by the domestic violence sergeant, usually me or my partner, investigators will follow up with the victims or survivors and suspects, identify those cases that we find sufficient probable cause to proceed with an arrest or direct present to the DA's office, and or coordinate with parole and probation. In July of 2015, we actually implemented this, it was a part-time assignment for the FAPA order violations. We implemented it full-time to include one sergeant with the police bureau, 2 police bureau officers, and 1 county deputy. Since that, from July 2015, over the next 18 months till the end of 2016, the team reviewed and closed 362 dispossession or firearm dispossession cases, removing 110 firearms from individuals. The team reviewed and closed another 168 FAPA order violations, arresting 52 offenders, and referring another 135 cases for direct present to the DA's office for prosecution consideration. Additionally, in many of those cases in which survivors did not want to pursue charges, the investigators worked closely with advocates from both Gateway Center or those embedded in our division to support the survivors both during and after the investigations. It just doesn't include criminal investigations. We'll try and support them in whatever needs they have. And I'd just like to thank personally, among all the community partners, Commissioner Salzman for his support in getting this program started, as well as DA Underhill.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
So some of the people you have to go after and physically take their firearms. How do others say, well, I've already turned it in? Is there a place that they have to put into all their firearms, and how do we know that they don't have more?
A lot of, as far as them turning it in, they're required to complete an affidavit if, when the FAPA order is completed and signed by the judge, they're required to complete an affidavit if it's been told to the court by the petitioner. If they have firearms, they have to say where they've disposed of those firearms. With Oregon state law, when they transfer those firearms, if it's to another individual, that other individual has to complete a background check, and it's easily followed up with OSP. Otherwise, they have to provide a receipt from a law enforcement agency where they've submitted the firearms for safekeeping.
So we don't just trust the affidavit?
No, and they can lie on the affidavit.
Yes.
But when we've
Then you still have to
submitted,
find-
we've submitted 18 cases in which we have believed they've been lying to us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sergeant, our final presenter today is a very courageous, determined, tenacious woman that I admire from the top of my head to the bottom of my shoes, and I'm so pleased she would join us today. Tiffany.
Thank you, Martha. Hi, I'm Tiffany Eagleton, and I identify as a domestic violence and sexual violence survivor. And that was a little emotional, so I'm going to try to get through this and be time conscious. So just to begin, my story started where my first escape from my first husband was at 22 years old. And it was in a small, I'm 34 now, it was in a small town, a small community, and they did not have the types of resources that we have here with Gateway or the education. And so hindsight, had I maybe got that at 22 years old, maybe I wouldn't have had to go through the next 9+ years. So I'm very grateful to Gateway. I went to Gateway originally in 2013, and I wanted to just list the services to give you an idea of that. As soon as a survivor or a victim of domestic violence, when they leave, and go get a restraining order, it doesn't just end there. It takes a long time, a lot of community support, a lot of services to get healthy, to break the cycle, if they get to that point. And I want to say my case was a high lethality case, and I am grateful to be alive today and to have also walked through everything that I have walked through to be sitting here today. So I originally went to Gateway. I worked with the administrative staff there, the navigators. I did restraining orders, multiple. I used their court services, the video services there, which was amazing for me because my abuser was at the courthouse more than one time. So I would have had to be in an unsafe, I probably wouldn't have made it into court. Gateway Childcare, I have 3 children. The VOA Home Free, several of their services. The DHS, the DV unit, the Oregon Crime Victim Law Center, DVRU, the police officers that are with the domestic violence, regular police, the divert team, district attorney's office, legal aid, the DV shelter, Raphael House, the RCT. I was in that program, the first participant, and that's for long-term domestic violence housing. Also, I used the vouchers for hotels. I also did outpatient drug and alcohol treatment. That is also part of my story. I have found many others who have tried to find a coping mechanism with that. And I almost have 3 years clean, so I'm very proud of that. Counseling for my 3 children, individual counseling, trauma counseling, the TRIM program, EMDR, parenting counseling, DV support groups, DV spiritual support groups, parenting support groups, domestic violence awareness class, and other education, anything that I could get to try to help me to stop my cycle of getting into unhealthy relationships, economic empowerment, and other financial assistance with that. So I would like to, this affected all of the entities of my life: emotional, physical, financial, mental, and sexual. So it's been a long journey, and I would just like to say that with all of the support that I have in my life, the domestic violence part of it, my advocates were the most powerful for me to be able to actually live a life today. And the expertise that they have, how they walked beside me, not drug me or tried to control me or told me what to do, because that's what I came out of. And so I was empowered by them. They were like my cheerleaders, and really helped me. And it was a beautiful relationship, is a beautiful relationship, and very unique. And I feel very empowered today. I live a life of service, both in my recovery of drugs and alcohol, but also in my domestic violence side. And I get to give back to other survivors, other families. And it's hard for me still to talk about myself this way, but that's what I'm here for today, is to represent what all of these services can do and what's possible and the reason we do it. And the main thing is that I cannot believe I'm alive today and able to sit here and do this, and to be healthy and thriving. And Gateway was really the start of that for me. And they have wrapped their arms around me, and it was a very scary process. So. I, of course, have so many more things to say, but I want to be time conscious and respect that, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here so much.
So could I just ask a follow-up question? I mean, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I think it's amazing that you're able to give back and continue to be thinking about what happened to you in your efforts to save others. Any consequences for your abuser?
Well, I do believe that we have a lot of work to do in the systems, in the court systems, and more domestic violence awareness for everyone. I think you guys are doing a great job, but there is definitely room for improvement. So
that's all. You don't need to go further. I'm sorry, that was kind of a personal question.
Yeah, there was some prosecution for he did violate the restraining order, and the DVRU team was able to prosecute him. But he just received like 4 hours in jail, and yeah, so I mean, it's still an ongoing process for me because I have children with both of my ex-husbands who were abusers, and so parts of it are sad stories, but I'm getting through it, and I get to take the experience that I've had and the challenges that I've had to walk through, and I'm able to have that knowledge and help others to hopefully not go through the same thing.
I so appreciate that. As you were listing all the services you received, I'm very glad that the services were available, and then I'm thinking what harm to you and to our whole community can come from one or two people who are abusive. And it says to me, kind of harking back to the prosecuting when people don't turn their guns in, there needs to be more consequences, because violence, as was noted, results in a lot of murders of people. And sometimes it's dealt with by 4 hours in jail. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing that too.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I really appreciate those comments. I think as a community, we're trying to work work on accountability all the time, and it is difficult. We're still up here. There's still a lot of work to do. I appreciated the nuance of your question of what if the person who turns in a gun has another gun? We don't know.
Yeah.
So, but 110 guns are not in those people's hands, and that's true. So it's celebrating and continuing to try.
And once they're on a restraining order, do they have to have another background check? Can they go out and buy another one?
They should not be able to buy a gun in Oregon if there is a restraining order in place.
If they've been convicted of a domestic violence crime or they have a restraining order on file, it's unlawful for them to purchase a firearm, and that should show up in a background check.
And I was just reading a book. We don't have a law in Oregon that says if the background checkers don't get back to them in 3 days, they get to buy the gun anyway.
There's no time.
I'm talking to the microphone because otherwise the captioners can't.
There's
hear
no
me.
time limit for the background check. It's just whenever they complete the background check.
So
Typically,
they can't get one without one.
They cannot get one if they have any conviction of domestic violence, be it misdemeanor or felony, or they have a restraining order currently on file.
I'm partway through reading through Hillary Clinton's book, What Happened, and she talks about gun laws in some states where if they don't get back to them in 3 days, they get to buy the gun anyway.
Oh, yeah, we don't have that in Oregon.
Thank you, I'm glad.
A study was just published that shows 57% of mass shootings in the United States have a domestic violence connection.
Wow.
Yeah. Before we part today, I did want to talk about this effort that you can help support me with this amendment to the YWCA grant that we're talking about. There's two different types. There's actually several different types of restraining orders, but the ones most frequently sought at the Gateway Center are what we call the FAPA, which requires a relationship with the other person. It's a marriage, it's a child together, it's a boyfriend-girlfriend situation. But there's people that suffer abuse and people in their lives that don't have that FAPA relationship that might qualify for what we call an EPDAPA, or the Elderly Persons and Persons with Disability Abuse Prevention Act. when an elderly or disabled person comes to the Gateway Center seeking an FDAPA and they don't have an intimate partner violence situation going on, we do not have the space or the staff or the capacity to help them currently with that protection order. And I'm really concerned about this population. I'm concerned about these people coming saying, I need the court's protection. And I'm wondering what else they would need if we were able to serve them. And I think I figured out a way in the fairly short term that we could do a study around these people and increase my staff capacity enough to let them come in the door. And that is through a partnership with Social Venture Partners Encore Fellows program. The Encore Fellows program brings on retired high-level professionals to do 1,000-hour-long projects in community sort of social justice-based endeavors. And I would like to bring an Encore Fellow into the Gateway Center to do EPDAPAs with people seeking them and to study their needs so that I could go to policymakers at the end of maybe a 9-month period of time to say, Portland could really benefit, Multnomah County could really benefit from a center that surrounded people seeking FDAPAs with services similar to the kind of robust and holistic services we currently do for IPV at the Gateway Center. Because I'm City of Portland, I can't employ an Encore Fellow directly, but one of my partners is willing to act as a host for an Encore Fellow, and without giving them any direction. So the direction to the Encore Fellow would be in partnership with the Gateway Center. The idea is that, again, they would do some FDAPAs in the building. They would go and talk to all of the elder abuse service providers currently in the continuum, Elders in Action, Aging and Disability Services. There's a ton, I don't know them, like I know my folks. And through interviews with stakeholders, and again, interviews with the actual people seeking services, come up with a vision for maybe what an elder and disabled person's Gateway Center might look like, or what the Gateway Center could expand into given space, staff capacity, et cetera. So that's what I'm asking for help with today. It's very strategic and targeted because, again, we're full to the gills at the Gateway Center. We regularly reach capacity in terms of who we can serve. But through this way, I think I can stop sending these folks downtown.
Good, thank you. Well, thank you all.
Thank you. And so why was the YWCA chosen out of all of the partners that you have?
They are the ones that currently host an Encore Fellow, and so we're willing to sort of take it on. They're close to us. Susan Stoltenberg is on the advisory council of the Gateway Center and is a person who's sort of deeply interested in aging and issues for the aging population, and it just seemed a natural partnership.
And I noticed that the initial relationship with YWCA was in 2010 when Commissioner Saltzman was setting things up, and many amendments over 9 over time.
Yes.
Are we going to be in the place where we can say these are going to be our permanent partners, or at some point do you have to go out for another request for interest?
I appreciate you asking the question. The amendment to the Gateway Center original relationship was as a navigator agency. They, in between times, closed down their shelter and opened the Yolanda Project, which is a housing diversion project that is housed at the Gateway Center. That housing project has been an incredible asset to us. And when the housing state of emergency was declared in 2015, the YWCA, with no additional staff, was willing to take on eviction prevention investments that would go straight into making sure that people didn't lose their housing. They were uniquely positioned to do that as the housing provider already at the Gateway Center. And so 2 of those amendments are about housing, and the others are just about increasing the terms of the navigator services. But they were a natural partner with Susan Stoltenberg at the head, already hosting an Encore Fellow to do this partnership. I think your question about navigators, though, is right, that there will be a time. These current ones expire in June 30, 2019, and I think at that time I'd like to go to the wider provider community again and say, do we have everybody who would like to be a navigator at the Gateway Center with us? Currently, SEI is actually not on contract with us. They provide navigation services through a grant. So I already have a partner trying to come in. So I do think it's time to go community-wide again the next time.
Thank you very much.
So I want to thank you. I'll ask you to stay here for a second. Before we go to testimony or take votes, I'd like to ask Mayor Wheeler to read the proclamation.
Great, thank you.
I want to forget that.
Yeah, it's my honor to read a proclamation on behalf of the Portland City Council in support of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas domestic violence is a crime that touches the lives of Portlanders of all ages, leaving a devastating impact on women, men, and children of every background and circumstance. And whereas domestic violence accounts for a significant number of assaults committed in the city of Portland, and nearly 1/3 of Oregon women reported experiencing domestic violence, stalking, sexual, or physical assault. And whereas Portland has demonstrated a long-standing commitment to addressing this problem in partnership with Multnomah County, the District Attorney's Office, and community service providers. And whereas 8 years ago, the City of Portland, in cooperation with Multnomah County, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, the Multnomah County Circuit Court, and community partners, opened the area's first one-stop center for domestic violence victims, the Gateway Center for Domestic Violence Services. And whereas the Gateway Center's satellite courtroom files over 50% of all restraining orders in Multnomah County and has upwards of 11,000 visits per year, 3,824 of which are unduplicated. Whereas children who are exposed to domestic violence experience higher levels of adult depression and trauma symptoms and are much more likely than children not exposed to violence to use and/or tolerate violence in their adult relationships. And whereas the city promotes the closing of the equity gap for Indigenous peoples through policies, practices, and investments that reflect the experiences of Indigenous peoples, ensuring greater access and opportunity, and honoring our nation's Indigenous history and contributions. And whereas the City of Portland recognizes and thanks all the organizations and groups that are committed to address, prevent, and heal from domestic violence, often working directly with survivors to ensure that they have access to employment opportunities, housing, legal resources, and other services. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim October 2017 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this month by gaining awareness of this issue and supporting organizations that work to address, prevent, and help those affected heal from domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to thank you all for great work you do. Spin the rules, yeah. I just want to thank, first of all, Martha Strawn-Morris for doing an outstanding job of leading the Gateway Center for Domestic Violence Services. You're doing a great job. Sergeant Padilla, for all the great work you're doing. Abby, for your continued work at NEA. And Tiffany, thank you for sharing your story today. It really helps to have the human touch. It helps us.
Very good. Thank you. Public testimony on the ordinance?
I have 3 people signed up.
Take a seat.
They're Star Stoffer, Joe Walsh, and Craig Rogers.
Coming up, 3 minutes. Name for the record, please.
Good morning, Star Stoffer. Quite frankly, I don't think $30,000 is enough. I am also a survivor of domestic violence. My own father tried to kill me 3 times, and I survived a brutal beating and rape where I was almost murdered in my own home at 15. Unfortunately, there are a couple questions/criticisms I have for the program. When I was young, I was also sexually assaulted by a police officer. There are many instances where there are women like me
who are abused by police officers, or for one reason or another, maybe their legal status or fear of being placed back with their abuser, like I was with my father, where they can't go to the police. They can't file a restraining order. It's not an option. There needs to be more services in place for these women, because I know from experience that when you're unwilling to file a restraining order, the justice system just basically wants nothing to do with you if you're not willing to cooperate with the police. If you are an illegal immigrant, the chances that you're going to want to talk to the police or take this to court are another issue. They're very low, because you're more terrified of being deported and further trauma being put against you and your children by reporting this abuse. I have known mothers who were deported after reporting their abuse to police, and their children taken away and placed in foster care. There are not enough services for women that are vulnerable to police violence, or women that are vulnerable to their status being in question as far as the legality of them being here. There needs to be more services for that. It's disappointing, and it's not a criticism against their work or what they do. There's not enough people like this program, but it's disappointing that there's only a person basically available one day a week for people with immigration status that is questionable by the government. There needs to be more. There needs to be a lot more services. There needs to be emergency housing and secret housing placement for people who are suffering or potentially suffering violence at the hands of police officers. There was a woman several years ago killed by her sheriff partner in Clackamas County in the middle of a restaurant with his police issue weapon. So this is, I'm going to go about 30 seconds over. This is a very serious issue for me. I was not able to seek justice against my rapist because 2 months before it happened, I was sexually assaulted by a Portland police officer during a search. So that wasn't an option for me. And unfortunately, there's a lot of women that's not an option for. There needs to be services in place and money in place for women who cannot go that route, to get them help, counseling services, and some form of justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record again, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. One of the things that I always find, and let me make this up front very clear, we fully support this, that we think it's a good program, we think you should fund it, however, we don't think the $30,000 is enough. One of the things that I find all the time, and I've been doing this with you guys for 10 years, is we fund the minimum. Why don't we fund the maximum? Not the middle, the maximum. They just asked you for more to do another program that perked up my ears because it had to do with the elderly. So I'm interested in that. I'm interested in you funding that. I'm interested in you asking them, okay, what is it that you need to feel successful? Not what you need to get by. That's what we do. We think, well, you know, we have all of these things that we have to spend money on, and we have to be careful with the money. My God, to save a life. I mean, I would defend that. Wouldn't you defend that? You'd go up to 20%, man. You would. You'd Zoom. If you stood there and said, I am going to give you not $30,000, I'm giving you $60,000. You know, when I go out on the street and Street Roots comes up and they say, would you buy a paper? I don't give them $1. I give them $5. I say, here, let me have the paper and go get a cup of coffee. You know why I I do that? Because it makes them feel good. Makes the vendors feel like someone pays attention to them. When somebody asks you for something, double it. If you can. Sometimes you can't. But if you can, they're asking for 30 grand. Give them 60 and say, do that other program. That sounds pretty good. You would be heroes. And then brag about that, Mayor, in an open press conference, not a closed one. And you would be heroes. You know, we come here and we pound you all the time. But believe it or not, I look for things that I can compliment you on. This is one. Go a little bit further, Amanda. Come on. You're shaking your head that you do it. Do it a little bit more. A little bit more. $30,000 is nothing in this budget. Save a life. Save a life. I grew up in domestic violence too. I was an Irish Catholic family in Brooklyn, New York in the 40s. A lot of knockdown, drag-out fights in my family. Give them the 60,000. And then read the proclamation, Mayor, with a smile. Now you can just say, we did okay. Do better.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Morning, my name is Craig Rogers. I live across from East Portland Community Center, one of my favorite places, and Floyd Light Middle School and East Portland Police Precinct. It's also been called a gamer trail, as the police have informed me. And there's a deeply wooded hillside there. And with this hillside, the homeless have gravitated to it because it's a bad actor's dream. I've seen numerous examples of domestic violence take place on this hillside. I've seen a woman take an elbow to the side of the head and go flying through the air, and I yell across the field, I'm calling the police, and then the two of them get in the vehicle and drive off, the RV. I saw a woman walking past my house and there's yelling going on, and I open up the door, and the guy's tracked her down, and he catches up to her, and he's threatening to dump her shopping cart with all her belongings in it. Now, I have called the city numerous times. If they even ask me, does this involve the homeless, and they go to non-emergency, and I hang for 20 minutes. You know, it just doesn't work. That's why my area didn't show up on that map in the article in the Oregonian. And then, to tell you this thing, I am so disgusted with what has happened here because there really hasn't been the attention focused on this. So there needs to be improvement and detail focused on these issues. There are people that actually, when I tell them what's happening in my bubble, what I see, because we're all in a bubble, we need to take a look at what it is, maybe we need to go outside of it. They will actually laugh because they think I'm making up what I've seen. So, talk is cheap. And I think we need to do more, and I really recommend doubling this in the least, because there needs to be a lot more attention. And right now I'm working close with David Douglas School District. They're the ones that have made a difference, because I gave up on the city. And they don't cooperate, they don't communicate. It's David Douglas School District. So yes, please in the least double this. And I never knew about this, the Gateway Center for Domestic Violence. This is probably very close to where I live. And I never knew about it. I'm really getting my eyes open down here today. So please, there can't be enough done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. So my suspicion is people will have much to say about the request that's just put on the table as we're taking a vote on the current ordinance. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Thank you very much to everybody who testified today, and particularly to the presenters. Commissioner Saltzman, I don't remember offhand what the total budget of the Gateway Centre is. I did notice that the city funds the lion's share of the operations funding for that. So this is an increase. It's not all that we invest. And in fact, it's in ongoing funding, so we don't have to discuss it every budget. It's a given that we're paying for that. I do remember that I think we passed a an ordinance allocating an additional $40,000 to Catholic Charities to provide services for people who are undocumented, and that there is, I learned, a visa that survivors of domestic violence are entitled to stay here by reporting the abuse. And so that I think is a wonderful program. I was concerned about the sergeant. I think he said that they're only able to follow up on about 10% of the abusers, and that has to be triaged by estimated dangerousness. As I was listening to the very moving and list of support needed to help somebody out of this cycle of abuse, it seems to me that we do need to get upstream and to hold those accountable who are causing people's lives to be wrecked and lost. I'm very glad that the council funds the Boys Strength program now in the police department, following on with the Girls Strength and Women's Strength programs to help adolescent boys understand how to be a responsible person when they grow up, and for women too to learn, because it's not just, as we heard, it's abusers can be any kind of gender. So thank you very much for the work that you do. I know that you do it because every day you go to work and you can help somebody, just one person or a lot of people, with this huge trauma in their lives. And so we need to mourn those who are lost and very much celebrate the survivors and the services that we're able to provide to them. Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, from getting the centre built in the first place to ongoing support for it. You've certainly been a champion for it, and I appreciate that. Aye.
Well, I want to thank Martha for the presentation. It seems that every year the services become more enriched and the outcomes are impressive. And I appreciate the care that you take to document those outcomes and to show the public what kind of return they're getting for this investment in such important work. And I want to echo what Commissioner Fritz just said. Dan has been the champion ever since I've been on the council for this work. It's almost inconceivable to think where the leadership's going to come from in a year and a half from now. And I suppose that's a conversation we're going to have sooner rather than later. But Dan, thank you for your tremendous commitment to this cause. Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, I want to thank everybody who's helping survivors of domestic violence to take one step at a time to a better life. And the money we're spending here with the YWCA to fund the Encore Fellow, I want to first thank the YWCA for stepping up to serve as the fiscal sponsor for this. But this money is $33,000 that's to help us really scope out the situation, to figure out what role the Gateway Center can play in better serving elders and people with disabilities who need restraining orders. So once we scope it out, you can bet we'll probably be back here asking for increased funding, more than we're asking for today. So thank you all and appreciate your services. Aye.
Wheeler?
Well, I want to thank everybody for their testimony. I want to thank the panelists. It was a very thoughtful and I think thorough and ultimately excellent presentation that shows that on this very weighty issue, progress does get made, and that there are good partnerships that exist in this community to make progress against what is a very pervasive issue in our society. I find myself compelled with those who testified, who said we should do the most we can do, not the least, but the most we can do. And I agree with Commissioner Saltzman. Well, first of all, I just want to put in another plug for the Encore program. I think it's a great program, and it brings in people who are seasoned, who are experienced, who are at the top of their game, who have broad sets of skills. And we all, as a community, benefit from people stepping forward and being willing to serve in that capacity and help us better understand how to improve our community by working together. And I do look forward to seeing the results of this work through the YWCA and through this Encore Fellowship. And my assumption as I vote for this $33,000 or whatever it is that this is leading to something. This isn't a one and done deal, that this is going to lead to a thoughtful expansion of services geared towards a growing population amongst those who are impacted by domestic violence. So I think we're all philosophically on the same page on this one here. So I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you, everybody who came in today, and thank you especially for those who are survivors of domestic violence who testified today. Next item.
1112, amend the Portland Enterprise Zone policy and authorize
Thank you.
the submittal of a boundary change request to the state of Oregon to amend and realign the Portland and East Portland Enterprise Zone boundaries.
Colleagues, the E-Zone program has been one of the city's most powerful tools to spur capital investment by companies while leveraging opportunities for employment and skills training for local residents and communities. It advances many of our city's objectives, including emphasis on traded sector jobs, maximizing our competitiveness, creating prosperity for all in our community. The values Portland holds as a city gives some context to this proposal. Our planning and smart development demonstrate that we care about how our city is being built and that value is shared by our local companies and those whose companies want to locate or expand in our area. The new workforce is demanding that companies act differently. It's no longer acceptable simply to come into our community to earn a profit. The benefits to the community must be broader. Prosper Portland, the City of Portland, and others want to ensure that the equitable economy benefits both businesses and the community at large. Public benefits have been built into this E-Zone program, and you're going to hear about that. And the proposed policy change marks a very specific action to begin to institutionalize those public benefits. We have many companies here who want to and are already doing good work in the community. Let's be clear about that. This policy change brings that good work into the spotlight to more fully serve our community. We're all in this together. Businesses involved in the program can and will be celebrated for their active engagement and participation in this shift towards greater partnership and stronger relationships to grow an equitable economy. Gentlemen, I'll let you take it from here. Andy, I don't know if you're starting or...
I'll go ahead and start.
Very
My
good.
name is Bobby
Thanks,
Lee.
Bobby.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Bobby Lee. I'm the Director of Economic Development for Prosper Portland. Thanks for allowing us to speak. Next to me is Andy Reed. He's the point person on the Enterprise Zone program at Prosper Portland. We know that you're behind on your schedule, so we're going to condense our presentation in hopes that you can catch up. We also have a couple speakers here today who's been waiting. So we'll
Excuse
keep
me, I
our
just want to
presentation
say,
short. Yeah, you bet.
I think this is a very important program, so
Okay.
I would encourage you to
Oh, okay, all right,
explain,
sure.
because I'd
No,
like people
okay.
at home to understand it.
Great, no, absolutely. The goal of the Enterprise Zone program, and this program has been around with the state of Oregon for a while, so most municipalities have this program. The difference today is we're wanting to modernize this program and address our growing concern, and that's the growing economic inequity. So the goal of the program is to increase economic opportunity and income for all Portland residents and historically disadvantaged Portlanders by linking them with quality jobs created by participating program Portland E-Zone businesses. And the word E-Zone is a short term for Enterprise Zone. We have two recommendations today. It's going to change in our policy and also amending the Enterprise Zone boundaries. And so that's what we're presenting here today. If I can get to the next screen. Okay, so you'll see on the map where the Enterprise Zone program boundaries are. It's a 5-year tax abatement. It's a property tax abatement only on new capital investment. That includes existing land, buildings, and personal property on the tax rolls. In exchange for the property tax savings, the company is then required to comply with a number of requirements under the state statute and local city law, which we'll talk about more in detail. The next part of this is you can see the amount of investment by existing businesses that are currently in the program. And if you look at, and we broke it down to different industries, and so in totality is around $1 billion of new investment to Portland. So the type of investments, however, are dictated by state statute. Retail, housing, and general commercial businesses cannot use the program. These are really focused on traded sector companies. You'll notice from the slide that manufacturing is still our biggest user in terms of investment amounts and number of projects. The jobs are located throughout the city. It has to be within the enterprise zone, but they are throughout the city, from northwest to the border of Gresham and East Portland. With that, I'll turn it over to Andy.
Hi, my name's Andy Reed from Prosper, Portland. Thank you, Bobby, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for your time. So back to the first thing that Bobby brought up, the goal is to increase economic opportunity for all and income for all Portland residents and historically disadvantaged Portlanders. And that's really one of the things that comes out in this local policy. Companies are required to do a number of things locally in addition to the state statute requirements. And one of the things that they do is they pay a portion of their tax savings into a fund, and this is a chart that you see of how those dollars are being allocated. So we have the direct benefits that are coming out in terms of jobs and investment and so on, but the other kinds of things where we can start aligning our dollars and our services together to do really unique and creative kinds of programs that otherwise may not have the funding available. So you see, these are the four kinds of things that we're using it for right now. We fund a la carte services such as credit repair and legal services. We're doing inclusive entrepreneurship work, workforce training through our partnership with Work Systems, Inc. for incumbent worker training. An example could be Bridgetown Natural Foods is now doing on-site ESL classes for their employees through this program. So some really good stuff coming out of that. In terms of kind of where the program's at today, there are about 4,000 current jobs in E-zone companies in the Portland enterprise zones. 2,000 of them are new. Companies have invested a significant amount in the last couple years. The wages are stellar. Where if you split out the $39 an hour, we're looking at about $28 an hour average wages with $11 an hour of benefits on top of that. So when we talk about middle wage jobs in the manufacturing sector, as we've seen declines in that industry in terms of job growth, E-Zone is one of those programs that is helping to grow the jobs that otherwise are shrinking across the board. The other thing that's happened over time is as we've amended our policy, and this process of coming back today is another iteration of that. We've seen other public benefits start getting infused into the program. For example, Daimler has set up a really amazing transit support network with about 7 different ways that their employees can access transit benefits to get to and from Swan Island. Jaguar Land Rover has set up a tech incubator. Salt and Straw is double down on diversity hiring. You'll hear more about that today from Kim. On the kinds of things that they're doing as part of the E-Zone program. And Instrument Marketing has childcare incentives for their employees, again, as part of what the E-Zone program did in the 2015 policy amendments. So we're starting to move in this direction over the last few years, and that's really where we're trying to go with this next, is making some policy changes to more directly infuse public benefits into the program. So the policy changes specifically that we're looking at in our current E-Zone policy is, one, moving from a minimum wage for 85% of employees. Currently, only 85% of the employees have to earn 150% of Oregon minimum wage, and that's $16.88 an hour. And our hope is to shift to $15 an hour for all employees, and that's for the janitors up through everybody else in a company that's enrolled in the program. If that is not tenable for some of the companies we work with, such as a food manufacturer, that typically those wages, it's going to be hard to get to $15 an hour for all companies at that level. We've come up with a strategy to say if the company is paying $14 an hour, then we need to see them pay $6 an hour in additional benefits for the employee. And doing our analysis of that, we've seen that there are a number of companies that would not have been able to access the program. These are the kinds of companies that have those entry-level jobs for the immigrant refugee communities, for example, in East Portland, where if we had a standard at the $16.88, we were concerned that those kind of middle wage job kind of creators would have a hard time using the program in the near future. The procurement plan, we're shifting to ask companies to not only buy locally. They've spent $92 million in the city in 2015. We now want to know who they're buying from. We want to encourage them to purchase from communities that are wanting to see more income come into their communities. In East Portland, for example, within communities of color. So that's the shift there. We're looking to create an option for us that if a company is not in compliance with one of the 7 or 10 things that are involved in our policy, that we have an ability to do a corrective action instead of an all or none program, which is what it is right now. Workforce training, this is more kind of a technical thing. We're seeing a lot of alignment between economic development and workforce development. And so we currently have a policy that splits the funds out of the Workforce Training Business Development Fund into 2 different sub-funds. And we'd like to remove that split as we're seeing, again, this kind of crossover between these 2 worlds that will create some additional flexibility for us and our partners. And then finally, really kind of the bread and butter of what we're trying to do today is really bring in public benefit agreements into the heart of the program, whereas every company that would be using the program would be doing additional things that go above and beyond the state law and our local policy, and really kind of looking at it from a jobs, prosperity, neighborhood partnership model where we have companies bring to us and we bring to them, this is what the community wants to see, and they say this is what we have in terms of our assets and what we're good at, and find ways to start aligning those things together. So this is what we're looking at for our boundary amendment, which is connected to this request here, and that is bringing in the Central East Side and Old Town Chinatown into the enterprise zones, and also realigning, you'll see up there in the Columbia Corridor area, shifting some of the land from the Portland E Zone to the East Portland E Zone. The zones were designated in 2008 and 2012. The 2008 zone, the Portland E Zone, that will be up for renewal in 2 years. So anything that we're doing today or anything that we do in the near future, that's all up for reassessment in a couple years, and council will need to decide if that's something that we want to continue.
I can't read the small print, so what's the proposed and what's the existing?
So the current proposed Portland E-zone decreases from 11 acres to 10.47 acres. And the East Portland increases from 8.27 acres to 10.96 acres.
What's the difference between the 2 colors on this?
They're just 2 different designations under the state law. You can't have more than 12 square miles in an enterprise zone. And so we have 2 separate zones to cover the 2 areas of the city.
So Bobby,
It's all the same.
I'll beat the mayor to the punch. When we have a slide like this and a key, can we make sure that it's legible?
Legible,
Because
you
no
bet.
one at home, if I can't read it, no one at home
You bet.
can read it.
So we'll do that. Thank you.
We've engaged in significant community participation and feedback through this process. For the last 6 months, we've been spending time with our partners in the community to talk about this. Here's a list of the different organizations that we've had meetings, for example, with the Metropolitan Alliance for Workforce Equity. They're doing really good work around community benefit agreements and things with the city. And so we've leaned on them to give us some advice about, is this the right direction? The Central East Side Industrial Council is strongly supportive of this. The Neighborhood Economic Development Leadership Group and the number of nonprofits and community leaders involved in that. We got to a point where we were able to get full support from them as well, based on the things that we were presenting to them. And this is really what they came back to us with. They wanted to see some strong oversight, that if we're looking to do more work around equity and inclusive entrepreneurship, things like that, that we have an oversight committee that helps us to make those decisions over time. And that there's strong alignment with the schools and with WorkSource Oregon, making sure that we're not doing things on our own, but that we bring those partners into the conversations. And finally, really looking at the East Portland investments. How can we encourage growth of business in East Portland, using the incentive and using the things that come out of the E-zone to make that more tenable for businesses as they're looking to site their businesses in the city. And in terms of equity impact, really kind of we're looking at 3 levels here. We're starting with the policy where we look at jobs, look at creating economic opportunity for all Portlanders using career ladder strategies and procurement. leaning on our community to do community-based economic development to inform this process with us, and having our newly raised Council for Racial and Economic Equity to join in that conversation with us. And then finally, making sure that our partners are aligned. This is something that we're starting to do a lot more of, is act as a convener and bringing partners together around economic development issues. And really now we're adding public benefits on top of all of that and making sure that as we see corporate social responsibility start to take hold in our community and community have interests and needs that align with what businesses are trying to do, we're excited to be in that place of bringing those worlds together. And so we'd be glad to take questions. We also have a panel that is ready to go. If that would be doable, start with them as you will.
Great, we have a great panel, bring them on up.
Thank you for your patience with us today. Thanks for hanging around.
And folks, we have Kim Mellick, the founder of Salt and Straw, with us today, Oscar Aranya, Director of Community Development for NEA, and of course, Jenny Glass, who's the ED of the Rosewood Initiative. I don't know if you have a particular order.
I wanted to say something to our friend from Salt and Straw. 20-something years ago, when I lived in New York City on 14th Street, right off of University Place, there was a local guy, restaurateur, who needed to get a liquor license for expanding his business. And he had to come to the neighborhood community board. And in New York City, the community board has the first say. And that's where I first met Danny Meyer, because he wanted a liquor license for his business. And later went on to become Danny Meyer. And then we read with some pride that armed with all the money he's made off of Shake Shack, he's now poised to help you go national. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's quite an honor. It's one of my heroes. In no small part, he's one of my heroes because I think he's doing a lot to change what it means to have a job in the hospitality industry in the United States, and fighting for great pay, for career opportunities, and to just have that respect that career deserves. And so one of the things I've learned from him over the past years is really central to how we've developed our business model, and that's putting employees at the center of your business model, next to your customers, next to the people who you're partnering with to make your products, and then finally at the very end of the line, the investors. And he knows that and is supportive of that. And I guess I share that because we talk a lot at our company about a saying, all ships rise. We're not going to do well if our entire community isn't doing well with us. And central to that is our employees. We're lucky enough to be part of this E-Zone, and I thank you for that. I told a story when I was here before that back in the day when it was the PDC, we were $40,000 short to open our first store, and we got a loan from the PDC. My partner Mike had to put his house up for collateral. I paid that off, and so we've had this ongoing relationship where the city has been very supportive of our company, and we appreciate that. What this means for us, we made a lot of commitments when we signed up for this, and we don't consider this a thing where we're going through and checking boxes. This is our principles, and we appreciate the support and visibility of our community in bringing these to life. And a couple examples, that we wanted to focus on this workforce development today. We think that we provide a really good basis for that because we do pay a nice living wage with tremendous opportunities for growth. We offer a very robust benefits program, including health insurance for part-time employees. They pay $35 a paycheck, and we cover the rest. We offer 3 months paid maternity and paternity leave. We offer employee assistance programs. The list goes on and on. We've been told it's about double what most benefit packages are for companies our size. And then lastly, we offer a pretty important training program, both for our employees who join our frontline, as well as a new career ladder and manager and training program that we just introduced that is a 3-month program to give people who work for Salt and Straw currently a way forward to become a manager if they don't have that experience. So we're really proud of that. I guess, what I would like to focus on are the partnerships that we've already initiated coming out of this
this agreement. We're partnering with Gateway to College. Casey Milligan, who was our first store manager, is now on their advisory council, and they're working to develop training programs to help students who are wanting to get their first job, a training program so they can go out and find their first job, hopefully with Salt and Straw, but it could be anywhere in the community. We've hired our first person who has come out of the federal penal system, and we're piloting that to make sure that we're good and can create the right support system to make them successful. We think we're in a unique position for people who are getting their first job, who are trying to re-enter the workforce, to support them and make sure they're successful and have hopefully a long career forward. We're working with an organization actually in San Francisco that we're going to take the learnings from and bring back to Portland called La Cucina. They incubate primarily immigrant women who want to start a business and help them get that business off the ground. So we're working very closely with several of the women who are in that program to sell their products, buy their products, and include them in our ice cream and help them with their businesses. And then just one last example, we're about to open our second store in San Francisco, which we're very excited about. We've been working with the Success Center there to hire primarily people who live in that neighborhood, which you may or may not know is really hard in San Francisco, and give them the training and job opportunities that they need to be employed. So we're bringing those learnings back to Portland as well as we open our new kitchen, hopefully next month in November, which is what this agreement was for. So those are just a few examples that we've been working on. I guess what I'd like to say is, we think that this is the right thing to do. This is how we want to be as a company. But I also want to emphasize that this is good for business too. I mean, this is a sustainable way for businesses to help create an economy that's good for our community. I don't think you can be a successful business if you're not part of a successful community. The two go hand in hand, and we need to be at the table with you helping to create those solutions. So I appreciate this opportunity.
Great. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Oscar Arana, and I'm the Director of Community Development at the Native American Youth and Family Center. The Native Family Center was founded by the community for the community. We work closely with our clients to deliver culturally specific services that guide them in the direction of personal success through cultural empowerment. Our continuum of lifetime services creates a holistic environment that is youth-centered, family-driven, and elder-guided. NAYA's microenterprise program builds economic resilience by developing entrepreneurship within Portland's Native community. We provide free business training, one-on-one coaching, and work to connect business owners with the resources and programs they need to sustain and grow their business. Our program includes an 8-week entrepreneurship class, which uses storytelling to guide entrepreneurs along their small business path. During these classes, we bring in experts on a wide range of topics from how to get a loan to what ownership structure best fits their needs. Clients graduate from class with a written business and marketing plan, as well as one-on-one coaching. Our staff provides monthly check-ins, review business plans, help resource new capital, ramp up marketing efforts, and more. Our next class starts October 19th, and we already have 20 clients registered. Supporting and developing accessible vending opportunities is also a top priority, as it's a critical source of income. A long-standing vending opportunity is the annual NAYA Powwow. This year, more than our 20 vendors earned over $1,000 that day, which is the most she has ever made at any vending event. We organized 3 vendor opportunities at NAYA and plan to bring one of them outside of NAYA in 2018. Financial support from the E-Zone Business Development and Workforce Training Fund has allowed us to enhance our existing infrastructure and reach more clients. We have matched the E-Zone funds with our own philanthropic support to hire a business innovation coordinator this year. This new position is focused on developing key partnerships to support clients who are ready to grow their business. One of our new partnerships is with the Oregon Native American Chamber. ONAC's business network complements our microenterprise coaching, allowing our clients to connect with long-standing Native-owned businesses. Both organizations are part of Prosper Portland's Inclusive Business Resource Network, a coalition of partners focused on supporting entrepreneurs. This network gives us better access and visibility to other providers. One of our clients has already benefited from this network. She used ONEX intake services, received a Prosper Portland scholarship to attend the Thai Excel Bootcamp, and is now enrolled in our microenterprise program where we will help further refine her business plan. So we support this action as it will create new partnerships between business and community that will enhance economic development in Portland's Native American community. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Jenny Glass, the Executive Director of the Rosewood Initiative. So we're a nonprofit based in East Portland on the border of Portland and Gresham. We're grateful to be supported by the City of Portland in many ways through the Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative with Prosper Portland, through the Parks Bureau, through our partnership with Portland Police and many of the other bureaus. In many ways, our organization serves as a liaison between our diverse community and the city and other government and public sectors. For too long, Rosewood and East Portland have been neglected, but I think that we're making progress with your leadership and the leadership of dedicated city staff like Bobby and Andy from Prosper Portland. Our mission is really simple in Rosewood. We want to improve the quality of life for the people that live there. We want to bring prosperity to our residents that are struggling. And even though that mission is simple, the path to get there is super complex. We need many different creative tools and initiatives to be able to bring prosperity to our community. With the proposed change to the E-zone policy, underinvested neighborhoods like Rosewood will have an institutionalized process to work with the city and with the businesses that are locating in our communities. We know our neighborhoods and what we need, which is why we're working closely with Prosper Portland to develop these tools that will give us real voice in community-driven economic development. The new E-zone policy will give us a seat at the table to negotiate community benefits with businesses that are receiving incentives. We can make sure they're paying well, they're hiring our community members, and they're even investing in a transit system that will ensure our residents will be able to get to work. Employers will benefit from this too, as they come to see our communities as an asset to their business and a partner in their success. We're hopeful that this tool will have a positive impact in Rosewood and that it will start a trend for our friends in East County, like Gresham and Troutdale, as more and more companies begin to locate in East County. Prosper Portland is a great supporter and ally of Rosewood, even when we're pushing boundaries of what they've considered traditional economic development. The policy changes presented today, I think, are an example of that shift in direction that Prosper Portland's taking to empower communities like Rosewood. We support this action, and we're looking forward to using the E-zone agreements to benefit Rosewood and East Portland. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Very good. So you can cool your heels. Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. How many people do we have signed up?
2.
Okay, why don't you call them up well, first, why don't you call them up?
I believe the first name is Ken, was it? I'm sorry, Molde, and Ranfis Giamblato Valhallen.
All right, well, while they're deciding whether that was actually their names or not, I just want to acknowledge President Mitsui from Portland Community College. Thank you for being here, and we're going to move your item next right after this. So thank you very much, Mr. President, for your patience today. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ranfis Ginatino Villatoro, and I'm here to testify, I think in general, in support of the E-zones and public benefit agreements. If anything, I have a few questions as well as some things to sort of champion in addition to the policy. One, I think, want to recommend a good oversight committee. I think strongly encourage the recommendation on that. I know I've discussed with several of your offices in terms of wage theft in the construction field, but I think labor compliance is a really important component. I think I want to echo the statements from the owner from Salt and Straw that when all ships rise, our communities benefit. And I think one of the things that I think with a lot of mission-driven businesses is, we should definitely have a value on verifying that, ensuring that our dollars are being spent the best way possible, and ensuring that the pay and the salary that's being promised is being verified, that we're verifying that the workers are being paid those wages. So ensuring that there's some form of a labor compliance component. You know, I don't think this is an issue with any of the manufacturers here present, but construction and manufacturing tops the list in terms of wage theft violations, typically around overtime violations. But I think, you know, the city could do, you know, build in place to ensure that, you know, workers are being paid fairly and laws are being complied. And it could be done in a very low-cost manner that's no burden to any of these companies. And I'd be happy to discuss how that could work. But I think ultimately, I just want to testify in that. Some questions that I have is, you know, whether the public benefit agreements, whether that language would be bound to say work that's contracted out by said company or said business. So if, you know, they contract with a janitorial service, whether that service is bounded by the public benefits agreement. So, you know, I heard if janitorial service workers are paid a certain wage, if it's hired directly from, say, a said company, would the case still be made for contracted out work? So hopefully that's something that's definitely in consideration. And I think, again, strongly recommend a good oversight committee, ensure that there's a seat for community stakeholders to be on that committee. And again, I hope that there is at least some level of labor compliance. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you for your testimony. Good morning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. One of the concerns I always had about PDC, and again, as I know it's Prosper Portland at this time, is when we're discussing, which I do agree with this, and I do agree with the changes being made. One of the concerns I do have by reading this map, I sure do hope that the United States Post Office is within this zone. And again, my main focus right now is what we're going to do with Amazon. And I want to make sure Prosper Portland provides everything they can. And if we're going to ever enter into these type of public benefit agreements, my main focus is that I think that we need to have the city auditor be able to audit these agreements. I want to know if the public themselves have access to these type agreements. If not, why not? I want to review every agreement that takes place within Prosper Portland and understand what's in these agreements. Do I have a right to do that? Do I have a right to ask the auditors to do a full audit on everything on these agreements? At this point, it's my understanding they have an exemption from being able to do that. That needs to be looked at very close. I want to understand what's in a target agreement. I want to understand what's in various other type agreements. Again, my main focus today is to make sure the city of Portland works very aggressively on bringing Amazon into the Portland market. And I want to make sure that Prosper Portland has everything laid out properly in the benefits to the companies such as Amazon. And the main thing from my position on these enterprise zones, and I understand you go out 5 years on the tax rebates, I think that is fine, but my understanding there is no limit on the dollar amount, if I'm correct on this. Maybe I'm incorrect. So I'd like to maybe have an understanding of that. And when you said that there was some type of requirement on the total square miles, and you referred to the Portland Enterprise Zone, it's somewhere around the 10 square miles, and the East Portland Enterprise Zone around the 11 square miles. So I understand you can just have the total amount up to 20 square miles, if I'm correct, and that's fitting within the requirements for this type of a zone. And I'll research that to understand that, because I was a little unclear. But again, I think this is absolutely, I do agree with this. I have a little concerns up by north on Marine Drive on where some of these zones are. I'm more familiar with the marinas up there, a lot of the owners up there. So I just want to see them also receive the benefits in the E-zone on their marinas out on the water, on the submersible land leases. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, both of you, for your testimony. Further discussion? Commissioner Saltzman?
Question, I just had a question. I just want to follow up on the testimony about whether subcontractors are included in enterprise by extension.
Under state statute, no, they're not included. There's a very strict definition of what an employee is or is not. 32 hours a week, full-time employed by the business. And so under these public benefit agreement models, this is an opening for us to start looking at things like this, to consider what are different ways that we can lean on businesses, and they can tell us what is good for them too, as we're starting to work together and collaborate on these kinds of things.
Okay. And my other question was the Council on Racial and Economic Equality. I guess I've never heard of that before. What?
It's a brand-new committee that was established at the Prosper Portland.
All right, so this is replacing
the
the
Prosper Portland Committee then?
It is community-based, and so it's a new entity to help us make sure we're hitting our equity goals.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions? Please call the roll, Carla.
Fritz?
This is a fabulous program. Thank you for your work on it, and thanks to everybody who testified. Aye.
Fish?
Yeah, thank you, Bobby, and team, and testimony, and pleased to support it. Aye.
Saltzman?
Yeah, these amendments and boundary extensions just make the enterprise program, more in tune with what Portlanders want these days in terms of social responsibility by our companies who are benefiting from these agreements. So great work. Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The resolution is adopted. Thank you. Thank you. Can we please move 1126 to the next item, please?
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Portland Community College and a grant agreement with the Portland Community College Foundation to provide $559,849 to the Future Connect Scholarship Program.
Colleagues, this morning we have the opportunity to hear from and support Portland Community College's Future Connect program. Future Connect is a scholarship and support program for students who identify as first generation or low income. The program focuses on eliminating barriers to college and providing students with ongoing support through their time at PCC. Through scholarship money, career guidance, and personalized advising, Future Connect helps students build pathways to their futures, and we're seeing very positive outcomes. Today we have with us an esteemed panel to share more about Future Connect and the program's positive outcomes. We have Mark Mitsui, who's the PCC president. We're very honored to have you here today, sir. And Susie, I always get your name right. Is Lahasni? Lassen. I wasn't even close. So you can butcher my name 5 times in a row. PCC College Foundation Board President, Josh Laurie, who's the Future Connect Program Manager, and Jessica Gonzalez, who's a Future Connect graduate, awesome, and a 2014 Future Connect cohort. So I will turn this over to President Mitsui. I assume you're kicking it off today.
I am. Thank you,
sir.
Mayor Wheeler. And thank you, Commissioners Fritz, Saltzman, and Fish, for the opportunity to be here today. We really appreciate it. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I may have to slip out for another event, but appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule today. So Mayor Wheeler gave my introduction, so well, I appreciate that. It actually saves time. I wanted to talk, though, a little bit about why Future Connect is important to Portland. And if we take a look at the heat map slide, we can see what's happening in the city of Portland and in our region and our service area in terms of rising income. I mean, the economic recovery has been robust. As a result, we have seen an increase in employment, which is great. However, we're seeing also a greater income inequality. And we are also seeing rising housing prices, which creates some displacement, particularly among first-generation families for whom college is a new experience, low-income communities, and communities of color. And so one of the, I think, valuable side effects and intentions of Future Connect is that through education and training, we are growing our own talent, and we are helping that talent access the middle class through Portland Community College. And so I think that helps set sort of a context for the program. And we're working to help more families that are at risk of displacement be able to stay here through their education and training at Portland Community College. So Future Connect is an important tool. As you will hear, it's not just the scholarships, but also the success coaching that is key to the success of the program. But it's really, I think, most helpful to hear from the experts. So what I would like to do next is to introduce Susie Lassen, who is the president of the Portland Community College Foundation Board.
Thank you.
Morning.
Mayor Wheeler, commissioners. We really appreciate you having us here today, and we'd like to update you on the PCC Foundation's efforts to leverage your investment and grow Future Connect. I believe our partnership is a unique one. With students as our focus, we have been able to identify mutual goals and come together with a solution. And Future Connect is a result of thinking outside the box and creating great impact with limited resources. The leverage of both public and private funding has made it clear that we're stronger together. And through our engagement, we are an example to others in our region, state, and even nationally. The financial partnership your financial partnership lends credibility. Your participation and stamp of approval of this program helps us to raise money to leverage for your investment. So the PCC Foundation has worked over the past 6 years to tell the story of Future Connect and engage with individuals, corporate, and philanthropic donors. To date, we have raised more than $2.9 million to match the contributions from the City of Portland. And as you will hear from the data, that investment is really paying off. I'm honored to be the PCC Foundation president. The foundation supports student access to education and training through scholarships and programs. But for me personally, PCC has given a lot to our family. Our sons now have a solid direction with employment in family wage jobs. And frankly, my husband has excellent employees, some of which have gone through the Future Connect program. I contribute to the foundation because I believe it's the best way to directly contribute to the successful outcomes in our community. Both education and training linked to employment opportunities frankly transforms lives. Mayor Wheeler, we really appreciated your participation in the gala this past year, helping us with your climbing gear, Climb to New Heights. And we hope to see you all there next year on May 19th at the Hilton. Thank you. At this point, I would like to turn it over and introduce Future Connect Manager Josh Laurie, who will tell you both about how and why your investment in Future Connect is working.
Thank you. Mayor Wheeler, City Commissioners, my name is Joshua Laurie. I'm the Program Manager of Future Connect, and I want to thank you for your investment in the students of Portland. In 2011, when we started this program, we had a very simple idea, which was scholarship and support. And 6 years later, we've gone on to do much more than that. As you can see, these are just some of the numbers of students that we've served in the last year. And so we actually are conducting outreach visits now to CBOs and K-12 partners each and every day. 270 visits in just 1 year last year. We presented to over 3,400 students. And our intent in presenting to those students is not just to talk to them about Future Connect, but talk to them about college and how the opportunities of college can exist for them. I want to be clear, this is not a high-achieving merit-based scholarship. We're focused on students who have access to TANF, free and reduced lunch, the homeless youth continuum here in Portland, and former foster care alumni. So a lot of the reasons that students may be moved down on other scholarships are the reasons why they would be moved up in ours. And so the idea is that we're working to identify those students who are probably pre-contemplative in their senior year in high school to get them to contemplative and action stages by the time they exit their senior year. And so they're ready. And this year we had over, 879 applicants. It's right there. And unfortunately, we were able to serve about 340 of them. What we did this year, though, to serve those other students who we identified as waitlisters, we conducted what we call the Summer Connect. We didn't necessarily steal that from WSI, but what we did is we said, if you applied to Future Connect, we want you to come out anyway to the campus and meet with our coaches. You might not get the full scholarship, the full bevy of services, if you will, but you will still get someone who you can connect to a large institution before you exit your high school. So we're trying to do more than just provide scholarships for our now 340 students. I want to also point to something that we did this last year, which is pretty inventive, and we had a third-party evaluation from Education Northwest. And some of the salient points that came out of that third-party evaluation are here on this slide. And this is something we're quite proud of. What we notice in students that we serve is that the students, and actually, I should actually start with this a little bit. If you look at this first insert, this shows you the student and the demographics of the individuals we serve. So 72% of our students are students of color, and we're really working to remove the achievement gap. And so the idea is that what we found from this Education Northwest eval was that students of color who were in Future Connect were actually surpassing students of color and non-white students who were not in Future Connect. And one of the pieces from this chart that really stands out to me is specifically the number of credits that they're receiving in their first year.
I just saw that. That's astonishing.
So 9 credits might not seem like a lot, but if you transpire that over 3 years, that could mean the difference between graduating from a community college in 2 years or 3 years. And so we're really trying to speed up and accelerate the opportunity of college. And well, all these numbers, and I can yammer on forever about numbers and what Future Connect does for our cohort of students, there's no one who really speaks better about the program than our students themselves. And I've been lucky enough to work alongside Jessica Gonzalez, Madison graduate in 2014, who came to us and did our work at Future Connect at the Cascade campus. So I'd like to introduce Jessica, and she'll tell you a little bit about her experience in the program itself. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jessica Gonzalez. I'm a recent 2017 PCC grad. I graduated from the dental assisting program, and I started back with PCC in 2014, right after I graduated from Madison, and then shortly, like a week in, I dropped out. And it was due to stuff that were going on at home, and then also a lack of thinking that I could actually really do this. And my coach was Kelly, who was at the Cascade campus along with Becca. So I always felt like I knew Kelly was my coach, but I had Becca alongside with her. And when I dropped, I didn't mention it to anybody. I just went along and dropped out and thought, well, soon my scholarship will be taken away too when they notice that my classes are gone. And Kelly, he had emailed me like a day or so after and was like, hey, I just want to know what's going on. And then another email, and I just didn't respond because I didn't really know what to say to her. And then I finally got a text message and was just like, hey, you need to talk to me. What's going on? And I guess that was enough to get me to reply back. And I came in and I kind of explained to her what was going on. And I told her it wasn't a good fit and I don't think I'm going to go to college anymore and I wasn't going to be able to do it. And she said enough to me to get some hope in knowing that let's just try this one term, one class, and then go from there. And I'll support you along the way. And that was enough for me to go back for one class, one term. And from there, little by little, I knew it was a struggle, but there was just so much hope with Kelly and Becca and believing in me. And I didn't feel like I had many who believed in me, and not even myself. And along the year and a half that I went to PCC, it was constant checking in with them, and they'd send me messages or emails and how's it going? And we have an office there that's right next to their office where it's quiet time for us to go and do homework and whatnot. And I was constantly in there, and every time I'd be in there, there was always a poke through the window and saying, hey, come talk to us, how's it going? And when I was my second term at PCC, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and Kelly took the time for a good chunk, an hour, to sit with me and ask me what is it that you want to do? And I remember telling her, I don't know, just maybe get my associates and go from there. And she's like, well, there has to be something deeper than that. And we went down the whole list, and I was in a medical program at Madison for 4 years, and I thought I wanted to be a nurse, and then I was like, oh, I didn't want to do that anymore. And then she had brought it to my attention, like, would you still want to be in the medical field? And I said, yeah, but I have no idea anymore. And she was like, well, what about, like, so she went down, like, well, nursing's out, and how about, like, being a doctor or pediatric and whatnot? And then she was like, well, what about dentistry? And I was kind of like, oh, that's a good idea. And she was like, well, you have a beautiful smile, and you seem to care about your oral hygiene, so why not? And I was just like, oh, okay. So she showed me that there was an assisting program and hygiene program at the school, and she was like, how about we start small and we finish what we need as our prereqs, and then we go from there. And I was like, okay, we'll try to do that. And I did that, and then she was like, do you want to try going into the hygiene program or assisting? And from there, I was like, well, let's start with assisting, so if I don't like it, I don't have to do it. And this is me still doubting myself, and she was like, well, I think you could still do it either way. And I was like, well, we'll start with assisting. And sure enough, I applied, and I got in, and the first term was really hard. I was taking 21 credits, and I was new to the whole program and knew nothing about dentistry, so multiple times I reached out and told her that I didn't think I could do it, and she constantly told me that, yes, you can, like, you've made it this far, don't give up, and we are here to support you. And sure enough, second term came around of the program, and it got easier in the sense that I knew more, and I felt more confident with what I was doing, and not only that, but I had the support, like, always right behind me. And then graduation came, and I couldn't believe it. And I remember I hadn't seen them the second or winter and fall, spring term as much. And I had stopped in around spring term, and I sat down with them, and they were like, "Oh, we miss you. We haven't seen you in so long." Because now I was going to Sylvania campus, and it got me really emotional because she was like, do you remember back in 2014 when you came to me crying and telling me that you couldn't do this, and I told you you could, and now look at yourself? And I was just like, yeah, you're right. Like, I had so much doubt in myself, and just their hope that they could see in me and I couldn't see at the time meant everything to me. And I know that without Kelly and Becca and all of the Future Connect coaches, that there's no way I could have done it without them. So. Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we suspend the rules?
Thank you.
I'm still trying to get my kids to floss, so I may need a consultation.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Is there any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have 2 people signed up to testify.
Very good. And Mr. President, if you need to leave, we certainly understand. Otherwise, if you'd like to just cool your heels, we'll hear some public testimony.
I just want to thank you for being here, being part of this program. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Great
your time.
results. Excellent
and
results.
your support.
Thank you.
We have Star Stoffer and Joe Walsh.
All right. Thank you, Star. Mr. Walsh, there you go.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
For the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. Star had to go to work. That happens with people that work. Doesn't happen to me anymore, but it happens to Star. So yeah, she regrets. I think her testimony would have been very positive. And also our testimony is positive, except we have a question about the administrative course. When we heard the word mentoring or taking people under their wings, how does that work? We would like to know if the money that you're supplying, what percentage goes to the scholarships and what percentage goes to the administration of whatever the college is offering as far as mentoring the students. We're very excited about this because I went to City College in San Diego for 2 years when it was free, and we had to buy our books, and we could buy used books. So it was very inexpensive for us to go. That's not true today. I know the city colleges are really working hard to go back to that, because it's very important that we educate as many people as we can, because we benefit from it. We do. So that's the only reservation that we had. We were wondering, like a nonprofit says, our administrative cost is 13%. and everything else goes to the clients. We would like to know about the scholarships, how much goes to the scholarships and how much goes to the administration part. And if the college is kicking in any money for the administration part, because we always have a tendency, like we did with TriMet, to criticize the receiver. What are you doing? We want them to do something. We want them to have some skin in game. So that's our concern. So thank you very much for your patience. And again, I'm sorry that Starr could not testify, but work is work.
All right, thank you, sir. Colleagues, any further discussion? Any further questions? Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Well, right after the enterprise zones, now we have Future Connect, another of my favoritist programs ever. And I always reflect back to when Commissioner Fish and Commissioner Saltzman and I joined Mayor Adams in 2010-11. It was really risky at that time. We were still recovering from the recession, and to have the mayor come and say that, we're going to put a few $100,000 into this seemed like a really steep price tag. And then when you look at the outcomes that we've made together, with the number of students who've graduated, who have lives back, like Jessica was telling us, it's phenomenal. And Kelly Thorne-Ladd, who was part of the brains behind the idea, now working with Kairos, and it'll be great when her Kairos students are old enough to go to PCC, which has become really an educational bastion in our community. More and more high school students take their prerequisites at PCC before either going to Portland State or to other colleges, and get that same kind of support, but not the wraparound support. And that, I don't know the specific answer to your question, Mr. Walsh. I think that the price of the scholarship is not nearly what we actually give, because it's about that wraparound support. It's not administration. It's providing the mentors, providing the people who are going to make those calls, take that text, make somebody come in and say, well, I'm dropping out, and then have that support afterwards. I appreciate our partnership with Portland Parks and Recreation, with our some of our student programs there that are then funneled into Portland to scholarships, and it's brilliant. And what's even better is the way that the business community has embraced it, that it's not just Portland City money right now. It's a lot of private investors, and the foundation, thank you, Suzilla-san, many times over is now donated because of all the students who've gone through and who come and tell us, either at the fundraisers or in City Council, during the budget, whenever, this has made a huge difference in my life, and I'm doing something that nobody else in my family has done before. And you realize that it's priceless. So thank you very much for all you do. Aye.
Fish?
Everything Commissioner Fritz said, I want to just compliment President Mitsui, who of course is not here to hear it, for his early outreach to the City Council. I appreciated early in his administration, he came and did the circuit and shared with each of us sort of his vision for his leadership. We're very lucky to have someone of his caliber at the helm of PCC. And I think the mission of the community colleges has never been more important, particularly because we're seeing these incredible transformations in the economy brought about by technology. And what that's going to mean is people in there who are the first to go to college in their family, or from blue-collar families, or live in East Portland, are going to see their livelihood put under a lot of stress. We're seeing it in the long-haul trucking industry. 1.6 million people are going to be, they say, potentially displaced in the next 10 years because of autonomous vehicles. Well, who's thinking out long-term about how to capture that value and how to make sure that people get the training they need for high-wage jobs? All the jobs we're trying to protect along the working waterfront with Superfund, if it ever happens. The Mayor and I are a little concerned about some of the most recent noise out of Washington, but there is this huge opportunity to address the changes in our economy by giving people the skills to pursue these new jobs, and the community colleges are at the heart of that. So I appreciate all the work you've done, appreciate President Mitsui. My only grievance today is that I've never liked the word cohort. I wish we could find another word, and I actually don't know anyone who knows what it means. And so I wish we had a more human word for like class of, or we know they become alums of, but maybe we can, between now and next year, come up with a better word than cohort. Thank you for your good work. We're proud to partner with you. Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, the one thing I can say about, words like cohort, they tend to work themselves out of the dialect after a while. Words come and go, and maybe cohort's on its way out.
There you go.
But I really, I appreciate, I'm glad, as Commissioner Fritz said, that the council did step up in 2011, 2010, and make this investment in Future Connect. There certainly was a lot of enthusiasm from PCC at the time, and I remember the chambers being filled with students of PCC. And you've really proven yourselves in those intervening years. And I really appreciate this presentation, and it makes me proud of PCC. And it makes me really want to go out and support that bond measure on the ballot in November for public safety improvements, or for enhancing PCC's public safety capabilities. So thank you. Aye.
Wheeler?
Well, I'm very happy to have the opportunity to vote on this. It's a great program, and I've watched it from a distance, and I'm very supportive. I do want to answer Mr. Walsh's question because I think it's a good one, and it's an important one. For the purposes of this agreement, administrative costs refers to reasonable charges to the program to cover the costs of facilities, insurance, and other indirect administrative costs as outlined in Attachment B, Future Connect Scholarship Program budget. These costs are capped at 6% of total program costs, which I think is eminently reasonable. So good program, good results, good objectives, and fiscally prudent to boot. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Colleagues, next we will do item 1124, and after that I'll poll you on how you're all feeling.
1124, direct the Office of Management and Finance to establish a Build Portland Advisory Committee and develop a funding plan for infrastructure maintenance.
One moment, it's here. There it is. Like many municipalities, the City of Portland faces challenges maintaining the infrastructure that provides core city services. This infrastructure gap represents a significant long-term liability for the city and threatens to deprive future residents of the services that make Portland one of the world's most livable cities. I proposed bold action over the next 20 years to begin addressing this problem by investing up to $600 million in the roads, bridges, parks, and buildings that our residents use every day. This is Build Portland. Nationally, it's been a great year for maintenance. For example, in New York, Governor Cuomo declared a state of emergency for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority as the MTA relied for too long on emergency repairs over preventative maintenance. Two recent derailments at Penn Station and the subsequent closure of aging tracks have significantly impacted service levels in the region and represent the high price of neglected maintenance. We're also familiar with the picture of the dam that nearly collapsed in Oroville, California in February. The city's asset management professionals note that $288 million more per year is needed each year for the next 10 years to maintain existing assets, compared to $268 million gap last year and a $242 million funding year gap the year before. The cost for repairing and maintaining increases as their condition deteriorates. Every year we don't resolve the funding gap, this gap will only continue to grow. This does not include a $129 million annual capacity gap. That's down $4.2 million from last year due to fixing our streets funding, which is additional funding necessary to address existing inequities and deficiencies in levels of service for current customers and citizens. The direct result of this level of sustained underinvestment is that significant portions of our asset base are in poor or very poor condition, which is the most costly for us to address. Previous council did a fantastic job beginning to turn around our long overlooked deferred maintenance problem, e.g. the parks bonds, the street fee, and other actions. This council continues that work with recent decisions we've made in water infrastructure. Build Portland will add to our ability to invest in long-term maintenance needs. I'm going to turn the discussion over to Mr. Tom Reinhardt and his team to provide us with the details of this resolution. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name is Tom Reinhardt. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer. I'm proud to be here today with Jamie Waltz from my team and Shannon Fairchild from the Budget Office. As we all know, Portland is a rapidly growing city, largely in part to planning decisions and investments begun decades ago that have shaped our entire region. One of the many challenges we face that the mayor so diligently and thoroughly outlined is keeping pace with the growth and maintaining our existing built infrastructure, particularly with the decline of historic funding levels from both the state and federal governments. As the mayor just said, the city has taken multiple steps under the leadership of this council and previous councils to invest more dollars in our parks, housing, roads, and utilities. This is just going to be another tool in that toolbox. On August 29th, we organized a work session to outline Build Portland. To review briefly, Build Portland is a vision for a long-term infrastructure investment funded by borrowing against some of the property taxes returning to the city's general fund from our many expiring urban renewal areas. As envisioned, Build Portland would secure an initial investment of $50 million approved by council, followed by planned investments of $100 million in fiscal year 2024-25 and $150 million more every 5 years thereafter. The earliest Build Portland project could begin in spring 2018. The resolution before you today directs the Office of Management and Finance to establish the Build Portland Advisory Committee and develop a funding plan for the entire program for your approval. Before we take questions, I want to take this opportunity to thank many people that have put their significant intelligence and limited time into developing this vision. Andrew Scott and Josh Harwood, along with Shannon and others from the Budget Office, the entire Citywide Asset Management Group, Kimberly Branham, Susan Anderson, Leah Treat, and Mike Abate, my formidable colleagues who have all provided their input and guidance. And with that, we will take any questions from council.
Colleagues, any questions?
So this resolution is to figure out the funding plan, and it'll take into account current capacity and various other things, like currently the contracts are going for way over estimates because of everybody's busy. Can you talk to me a little more about that?
Yes. So what this resolution does is directs us to actually formalize the committee of multiple bureau directors and asset managers, and then come up with a funding plan by March that takes into account all the other tools that this council and the previous council have started to really take forward motion on, so that it's a complementary tool, and to put forward a package of initial projects that council under the various bureaus that you oversee have already, along the long list of infrastructure deferred maintenance, have already developed, and to try to put together a diverse set of projects that'll meet our needs.
And when does the money actually start flowing from the urban renewal districts that are closing?
So it's a very, beginning really in 2020, the dollars start to come back, but it's a very small amount, and then it kind of hockey sticks up over the next 10 years. I can resend that graph around that we worked on in the work session. But one of the charges to this work group is to actually figure out, is it advantageous to bond against the dollars now before they've come back, or should we use another funding mechanism? And we will present those options to council.
Great, thank you.
Tom, we had a hearing this morning. Well, we had some testimony about unreinforced masonry buildings. And one of the issues that I'm going to be focusing on is how do we make our affordable housing inventory safer without imposing exorbitant costs on our nonprofit partners. Has the Housing Bureau flagged that as a potential investment area for this program?
I'm going to defer to my colleagues up here, but I do not know that.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to know whether it's a plausible candidate, and if not, why not? But since the goal there is to ensure the long-term viability of a capital asset that we have, in many instances, got a 60 or 90-year covenant, seems to me we're going to hear a lot of pushback from nonprofit operators that just don't have the resources. And this may be an area where we want to do some front-loading work to make these buildings safer. And it seems to me like this might be a reasonable candidate. I'm not advocating for it, but I'd just like to have it go through the screening process.
We will dig into that and get that information.
I think there's about 7,000 units that are potentially covered. So,
Very good. Any other questions? Is there any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have one person signed up, Ranfi.
Very good. Come on up.
You've become a regular. One thing struck me, though. Do you have an affiliation that you need to disclose in terms of your testimony?
For this one, yes. I think last one was more personal. But in this testimony, will be representing Professional Business Development Group, which is a trade association of women and minority-owned construction firms.
Thank you.
I do want to include a testimony, partial testimony for Kelly Haynes with Metropolitan Alliance for Workforce Equity. She just had like 3 questions, whether someone could follow up after this meeting or answer them here. But I told her I definitely would ask those questions. Some of the questions she had is, since resources are being redirected from the URA, what resources will be pulled from those URA zones, if that makes sense? What are the community benefit considerations with these proposed?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So what do you mean by resources being pulled from urban renewal districts?
My understanding, and I could be wrong, is the proposal is to redirect TIF money or URA money. No?
No, so I just don't want us to put premises on questions that are not factual. And if there's something that you need a briefing on or something we need to follow up on, but I don't think we should have the record cluttered with premises that are not factual.
Okay, yeah. Again,
it seems like there may be, if there's a dispute about that, because I share the goal of where you're going in your testimony, let's make sure you get a briefing on that.
Yeah, happy to. Again, just reading questions sent to me. A couple other questions. Kelly Haynes, correct. Just other questions here are, what are the community benefit considerations on the proposed significant infrastructure projects? I, again, understand that you guys are just building the advisory committee. Who will decide where they address address crumbling infrastructure or the definition for infrastructure? And then, what's the timeline for the formation of the advisory committee?
Can we read between the lines in your testimony that either you or Kelly or both would be interested in being considered for this oversight body?
You're the best. Thank you.
I can't speak for Kelly, but I know.
You just did speak for her, actually. But if there is someone who is interested, I think you should let us know, because the best way to address these questions would be on the oversight body. And it sounds like we would benefit from these tough questions being asked.
Yeah, great question. Can follow up for Kelly or have Kelly reach out to you guys. But I personally would be interested, again, just to present a diverse set of voices and stakeholders. Again, I think in general, now testifying on support of PBDG, supporting infrastructure improvements, I think it's really vital and important. I think we benefited from, several decades of work that our forefathers are those before us have done for us, and I think we benefited from those infrastructure. And I think it's time that we improve infrastructure as a case for safety. And I think having good infrastructure is good for the economy in the city of Portland. I think last I just want to conclude is, I think it's really always important to provide a displacement lens, ensure that local businesses and local contractors have access to these jobs, NWESB sort of goals. So as those details come up, those are the things I think that I would personally, as Representative PPDG, would love to see rolled out. But thank you very much.
Yeah, excellent questions. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor, for your leadership on this. I'm glad that this is getting going with the discussions in plenty of time. Aye.
Fish.
It occurred to me, because I think this gentleman did raise some good questions, that it would be helpful to have an updated FAQ that just describes what we are and aren't doing at this stage. And I know we would benefit in my office, because we'll get similar questions. And it is the season of both the CBA plus the CEIP and more generally how we're doing contracting. So as these issues merge, I think we need to be able to explain how it does or does not overlap. And our office would respectfully request an FAQ so we can to give out timely and accurate information. So
Consider it done. Yeah, good
Thank you.
idea.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, I just want to thank Mayor Wheeler for coming up with the idea of Build Portland to bring much needed more dollars to our infrastructure needs as a city. So I look forward to the work this committee will do, and I look forward to the ultimate investments, additional investments in critical infrastructure that these dollars will make. Aye.
Wheeler.
Well, I don't want to take all the credit for this. You know, Tom and Andrew and many others have been toying with these ideas for quite some time. So thank you for the generosity. I'll consider my contribution making sure that we get it done. Aye, the resolution's adopted. Colleagues, we have two more. Keep bowling through them.
Let's get them. Then I can
Good.
take
All
them
right. 1125, please.
The ones that say 20 minutes, Mayor, last an hour or 5 minutes.
I know it's
think
almost a jinx.
We have a very elastic
yeah.
definition of 20 minutes. This one should last 5 minutes.
1125, amend contract with Convergence Architecture to increase contract amount by $7,545 to add janitor rooms to the 1900 building restroom upgrade project.
Excellent. Good morning, or good afternoon.
Good
sorry.
afternoon. 3 minutes. That's how much I need. Randy Selleck, Construction Project Manager with OMF. This is an amendment to a contract with Convergence Architecture. We currently have a contract with them for our ADA improvements for the 1900 building toilet rooms. We added gender-neutral toilet rooms last time. By doing that, I took away some janitor storage closets. On the stakeholder committee, kind of came to my attention while also working on a construction project currently in the building. The building does not have any janitor sinks. So during that construction projects, the contractors were using the bathroom sinks to wash up, and as well, they could not wash their paintbrushes in the building. They actually had to walk over to PSU. It seems to me this is a good opportunity to remedy the fact that we have no janitor sinks in one of our city buildings. I've recommended that Convergent Architecture look into adding 3. We would have an addition on the 2nd floor, 3rd floor, and 7th floor. I found areas that seem to be a good location, also close to existing plumbing. So this contract is to have them look into that, which is $7,545 for design services. Any questions?
I'm glad you explained that, because I was thinking, boy, that's a bargain to get three janitor closets for that much, but it's for the
Yeah,
design.
it's design services, yeah, to add it to our toilet project. It's another plumbing project, so it seemed to make sense.
And how much about will it add to the cost?
I don't know. That would be part of their design fees, to get a cost estimate to see how much it would add to the overall project.
Thank you.
Cost.
Very good. Well, you know it's been a long city council session when we get to the bathroom talk. Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Joe, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Thank you for your work and for your brevity. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Thanks, Randy.
Great, thank you so much.
You bet. Last item, 1127.
Amend vehicles and traffic code to authorize Portland streetcar supervisors and superintendents to tow vehicles.
Commissioner Saltzman.
I will turn it over to Catherine Levine.
Thank you. The purpose of the ordinance is to eliminate an old code provision that provided for moving vehicles and clarify that Portland streetcar supervisors call for tows under the same code provision that parking patrol, police officers, and other entities make calls for tows. A little bit of history: when streetcar opened, before the Pearl was very developed, there was a practice in years past, if a vehicle blocked the train from moving, that a tow could be called and the car would literally be moved to the next available on-street parking space. That has not occurred for years. What is occurring in that very well-developed area is that if there is a car or truck, oftentimes it's box delivery trucks blocking the transit movement, the supervisors will look for the owner of the vehicle. If they're not able to find them, they'll call for a tow in order for the transit service to continue. So just a bit of perspective, we had 4.7 million riders last year, and the trains went around about 418,000 miles of revenue service on the 16 miles of track in the downtown.
You know, it's timely that you're bringing this forward. I was downtown the other day and near the Target store, and someone double parked on the track. And I think I might have tried to make a helpful suggestion to this person that the train was coming, and my eyesight's getting worse with age, but I think the gesture I got back was not as friendly. But I would hope that people have the common sense not to double park on the actual rails. You know, I can understand if it's too close to the rail, because frankly, there's a question of clearance in some of our system. But it's just plain rude to double park on the rail and to keep a streetcar backed up. And I hope people understand that's not acceptable.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, and thank you for your patience. Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. Please call the roll.
It's a non-emergency.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. This is a first reading of the non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading.
See you too.
There being no further business, we're adjourned till 2 p.m.